Chapter 522. Ghost Cultivators? Mo Chenga was puzzled. Everything in the world had different cultivation paths. Human cultivators had their own paths such as Taoism, Buddhism, and Confucianism. Swordsmanship, martial arts, talisman medicine, and other branches were derived. Demonic beasts also had their own cultivation paths and eventually became demonic cultivators. But Mo Chenga had never heard of ghost cultivators. According to legend, after people died, their souls would leave their bodies and become ghosts. Ghosts had powers that humans didn't have. But this was only the imagination of mortals. For cultivators, this wasn't the case. For cultivators, humans were composed of the body and the primordial spirit. They didn't care about the soul because it had no power. Besides, once the soul left the body, it would lose all its memories and enter the reincarnation cycle again. Therefore, ghosts didn't exist. Reincarnation was an inherent law of heaven and earth. No matter how high their cultivation levels were, they couldn't touch it. Lord Taoist Miaoyi didn't know how to explain ghost cultivators, so he said, "Junior martial brothers and sisters, why don't we talk about it later? It's not the right time." Mo Chenga looked around. With so many people around, it really wasn't a good time to talk, so she stopped asking. Before long, the meeting was over. The two of them followed Xianin and Miaoyi back to their temporary residence. Their temporary residence was next to Wanhe Pagoda. It was a quiet courtyard with strict restrictions. As soon as they returned to the small courtyard, Lord Taoist Xianin asked impatiently, "Junior martial brother Shoujing, why did it take you so many years to come back?" Nascent soul cultivators like them knew about Mo Chenga's trip to Yunzhong. They also knew about the destruction of the undersea passage and Qin Shi's decision to cross the sea to look for her. But they didn't expect that Qin Shi wouldn't come back for dozens of years. During these years, they could only speculate about their situation from their life lanterns. Not long after Qin Shi crossed the sea, his life lantern suddenly became dim. He must have been seriously injured. Later, his life lantern slowly stabilized and regained its brightness. After that, both his and Mo Chenga's life lantern dimmed occasionally but never showed any signs of being extinguished. This puzzled the nascent soul cultivators of Shenqing School. Their life lanterns weren't affected, which meant that although they were injured, they would recover soon. Why didn't they come back for dozens of years? Before, Mo Chenga couldn't cross the sea because her cultivation level wasn't high enough, but after Qin Shi went, this problem didn't exist. It couldn't be that they hadn't met each other in dozens of years, right? In the end, they could only guess that he was trapped by something and could not return for the time being. Qin Shi smiled wryly. "It's not that we don't want to come back, it's that we can't." As he spoke, he briefly told them about what happened in Returning Ruins Sea. Lord Taoist Xianin and Lord Taoist Miaoyi were both shocked and sighed with emotion. "I never expected there to be such a secret place in Yunzhong," Lord Taoist Xianin said after listening to their story. "Fortunately, you guys have deep good fortune. Not only were you not trapped in the immortal palace, but you also profited from misfortune and obtained an enormous fated chance." Lord Taoist Miaoyi said to Mo Chenga, "Junior martial sister Qingwei, your guts are too big. You haven't formed your nascent soul yet, but you already dared to deal with so many nascent soul cultivators, including so many great late-stage nascent soul cultivators. What if something goes wrong?" There was a hint of reproach in Lord Taoist Miaoyi's tone, but it was also filled with concern. Mo Chenga's heart warmed. She smiled and said, "There's nothing I can do about it. At that time, I didn't know Senior Martial Brother had also come to Yunzhong, and I couldn't find a shortcut to return to the Celestial Pole, so I had to find a way to advance to the nascent soul realm and cross the South Sea. Besides, with Senior Fu Yaozi's help, those nascent soul cultivators couldn't do anything to me." "That's true, but are you so sure that Senior doesn't have bad intentions?" Lord Taoist Xianin shook his head in disagreement. "Fortunately, you won the bet, but doing this was too risky. Yes, if something like this happens again, I'll definitely consider it carefully." Mo Chenga knew her two senior martial brothers and sisters cared about her, so she didn't argue with them. Speaking of which, those big cultivation groups in Yunzhong really bullied people too much. Lord Taoist Xianin said with displeasure, "If we were in the Celestial Pole, how could we let them treat junior martial sister Qingwei like this?" Mo Chenga wasn't really angry about this matter. She only said, "Everyone has their own standpoint." She then asked, "Right, what's with the ghost cultivator's senior martial sister Miaoyi mentioned? Do ghosts really exist in this world?" "Of course they do." Lord Taoist Miaoyi smiled and said, "Qingwei, although you're already a nascent soul cultivator, you're still young, so it's not strange that you don't know." As she spoke, Lord Taoist Miaoyi began to explain. When a soul left the body, it would lose its memory and become an unconscious, powerless mass of energy. It would then enter the cycle of reincarnation. This was a well-known fact in the cultivation world. But under special circumstances, for example, when a soul had a strong obsession before death, there was another possibility. The soul left the body but still retained its consciousness. Since it retained its consciousness, it could cultivate. Just like cultivators who advanced to the next realm, its strength would become stronger and stronger. In the end, it would cultivate a ghost body and become a ghost cultivator. Most ghost cultivators didn't have their memories from when they were alive, but there were also ghost cultivators with strong obsessions who retained part of their memories. This kind of ghost cultivator was the most powerful. The emergence of ghost cultivators was very difficult. First, they had to have a strong enough obsession to allow their soul to retain its consciousness, which was even less likely than mortals with spiritual roots. Secondly, he had to know the cultivation method. If he didn't know the unique cultivation method of ghost cultivators, even if his soul retained its consciousness, it would slowly lose its energy over time and finally enter the cycle of reincarnation without knowing anything. The cultivation method of ghost cultivators was almost lost in the celestial pole, so ghost cultivators naturally didn't exist. Therefore, most cultivators didn't know the existence of ghost cultivators, including some nascent soul cultivators. We originally thought ghost cultivators didn't exist anymore, but we didn't expect that after the changes in the world this time, a continent with both ghost and monster cultivators would appear. What's going on? Qin Shi asked, where are we now in the celestial pole? What's the situation on this continent? Previously, Yuanzhou moved, Yunzhong disappeared, Xiaoyang appeared in Yunzhong's place, and he also discovered the monster continent. He and Mo Chang'e had long guessed that the celestial pole wasn't where it used to be, but they didn't expect a new continent to appear around the celestial pole. Lord Taoist Xianin said, let's put it this way. The South Sea is now northeast of the celestial pole. The South Sea used to be south of the celestial pole, but now it was northeast of the celestial pole. In other words, the celestial pole moved southwest by a whole continent? Mo Chang'e thought for a moment, then reached out and drew on the table with her spiritual aura. She drew Yuan province first. To the south of Yuan province was the monster continent, and to the north of Yuan province was Xiaoyang. Xiaoyang was originally in Yunzhong's place, which meant that to the north of Xiaoyang was the South Sea. Using the South Sea as a reference, the celestial pole should now be west of Xiaoyang and northwest of Yuan province. At this point, Mo Chang'e paused for a moment, then asked, where's this new continent? How big is it? Lord Taoist Xianin and Lord Taoist Miaoyi looked surprised as they stared at the spiritual aura map on the table. Lord Taoist Miaoyi asked, Junior Marshal Sister Qingwei, where did you get this map? Mo Chang'e said, when Senior Marshal Brother and I were trapped in Yuan province, we inquired about it. According to the people in Yuan province, Yunzhong disappeared and Xiaoyang appeared in Yunzhong's original place. I thought about it, then the celestial pole should be here. The two Lord Taoists thought for a moment, then nodded in agreement. Lord Taoist Miaoyi reached out and also used spiritual aura to draw a circle below the celestial pole. She said, the continent we're talking about is here. It's about half the size of the celestial pole. According to Lord Taoist Miaoyi's drawing, this continent was connected to the celestial pole, and the place they were connected to was directly south of Kuanzhong City. No wonder all the big cultivation groups joined hands to take over Kuanzhong City. So that was why. The two of them were suddenly enlightened. There was a vast forest south of Kanwu, and this forest was the territory of demonic beasts. This new continent happened to appear in the south of the celestial pole and was connected to the forest. They now understood why so many nascent soul cultivators stopped cultivating and gathered together. The cultivators of the celestial pole had never been afraid of demonic cultivators. For more than 100,000 years they fought each other, but they also maintained a relatively balanced situation. But it was different now. This new continent was inhabited by demonic cultivators and ghost cultivators, and it was connected to the forest. This was tantamount to the demonic cultivators' territory greatly expanding, and the former balance was destroyed. Lord Taoist Miaoyi continued to say, this continent is very strange. There are mortals, ghost cultivators, demonic beasts, and demonic cultivators, but there are no immortal cultivators. How could that be? Qin Shi asked curiously. Since ghost cultivators exist, it means there are ghost cultivation techniques on this continent. When ghost cultivators first appeared, wasn't it because immortal cultivators retained their original memories, which was why they created ghost cultivation techniques? He knew a bit about ghost cultivation. Even if mortals retained their original memories, it was impossible for them to create cultivation techniques before their energy disappeared. Therefore, the first ghost cultivation came from the souls of dead immortal cultivators. Junior Marshal brother, what you said isn't wrong. Lord Taoist Xianin smiled bitterly. But that's the truth. After this continent appeared, we sent people to investigate, but we didn't find any immortal cultivators, but there were a lot of ghost cultivators. If there was an abnormality, there must be a monster. However, this matter could only be understood slowly. They couldn't know the truth all at once. Then what about the current situation? Mo Chenga asked. So many nascent soul cultivators gathered together? Could it be that those demonic cultivators joined forces? Correct. Lord Taoist Miaoi nodded. After this new continent appeared, we found that the demonic cultivators in the southern forest joined forces with the demonic cultivators on this continent. In the past year, these demonic cultivators have become restless. Although there haven't been large-scale attacks, there have been many small-scale conflicts. Especially in the past few months, there have been frequent sneak attacks by high-level demonic cultivators, and even nascent soul cultivators have fallen. All the big sects have come to a conclusion that if we don't take measures, we'll be defeated by the demonic cultivators sooner or later, so it's better to take the initiative to attack and use offense as defense. I see. There weren't many high-level demonic cultivators in the southern forest, but if this new continent was included, the number of nascent soul cultivators in the celestial pole would only be a lot more than the number of nascent soul cultivators in the celestial pole. The situation was so grim that if they waited until a real conflict broke out, it would be too late. No wonder Lord Taoist Miaoi said it would be good if it was just a demonic beast riot. The current situation was that the demonic beast riot had expanded several times. If the cultivators in the celestial pole didn't gather together, they would most likely be wiped out. Chapter 523. Junior Marshal Brother Shoujing, you and Qingwei just came back, so you should go back to the school first. It's enough for Senior Marshal Brother Xinjiang, Senior Marshal Sister Miaoi, and I to represent Shenqing School. Yes. Lord Taoist Miaoi echoed. The war hasn't started yet, and it's only in the preparatory stage. Even if the war starts, it'll be a long time, so we still have to do what we have to do. Qin Shi understood what they meant. In order to deal with the Yao cultivators, there were other matters that needed to be taken into consideration as well. For cultivators, cultivation was always the most important thing. Humans fought against Yao cultivators for the sake of survival and cultivation resources. It was the same for Yao cultivators. Thank you for your care, Senior Marshal Brother and Senior Marshal Sister. He thanked them sincerely, then asked, where is Senior Marshal Brother Xinjiang now? 3 nascent soul cultivators came to Shenqing School, and even Senior Marshal Brother Xinjiang was dispatched. What about the other cultivation groups? Senior Marshal Brother Xinjiang went to investigate the beast cultivators' movements, Lord Taoist Xianin said. It's a big deal. Almost all the influential cultivation groups came for the conference in Kuanzhong, and the ones who came were the real leaders of their sections. Our group has Senior Marshal Brother Xinjiang, the 2 late-stage nascent soul cultivators from Tiandao sect, Venerable Swordsman Yuanying from Gujin sect, and Householder Heavenly Herb from Danding School. He paused for a moment, then said, by the way, you still don't know, right? Householder Heavenly Herb has successfully advanced to the late stage, and Danding School can be considered to have risen again. Really? Qin Shi was a bit surprised. Only one late-stage nascent soul cultivator appeared in the celestial pole every 200 to 300 years. His master advanced less than 100 years ago, but another one actually advanced. So, there are 7 late-stage nascent soul cultivators in the celestial pole now? Yes. Lord Taoist Miaoi sighed. During the demonic beast riot more than 100 years ago, Danding School's orthodoxy was almost wiped out. It still counted as one of the 7 great cultivation groups, but everyone just got used to it. In terms of scale, it's slightly smaller than medium cultivation groups. But I really didn't expect Householder Heavenly Herb to advance to the late stage in more than 100 years, and Danding School suddenly prospered again. The world is really unpredictable. The river flows east for 30 years and the river flows west for 30 years. Lord Taoist Xianin also sighed with emotion. Ever since Householder Heavenly Herb advanced to the late stage, the conditions for commissioning him to concoct medicinal pills became much harsher. Our Shenqing School isn't that bad. We also have a lot of disciples in the Tao of concocting in our school, but the biggest headache is Biyun sect. All these years they've given us a lot of benefits. Mo Chenga also knew a little about what happened to Danding School back then. The reason why Danding School had fallen into such a state was not unrelated to the other 6 sections. The 7 great sects had originally formed an alliance to attack and defend. If it weren't for the fact that the other sects couldn't send reinforcements in time, the Danding School wouldn't have lost their base. Moreover, the other 6 sects had intentionally delayed the reinforcements for their own benefit. In the past, Danding School's strength was greatly damaged, so they had no other choice but to swallow their anger. Now that Danding School had prospered again, even if they couldn't take revenge, they could still discuss the other sects with regards to pill concocting. Among the 6 sects, Tiandao sect and Shenqing School were the most powerful. They each had 2 late-stage cultivators, so Danding School didn't dare to go too far. Gujian sect was a sword cultivator group, so it didn't rely too much on medicinal pills. Zhengfa sect was located in the northernmost glacier and was only a branch in Kunwu. As for Lingshou sect, it didn't have many people and took a side path. The last one was Biyun sect. It had many disciples and was an orthodox Dharma cultivator, so it needed a lot of medicinal pills. Thus, Danding School just happened to have a hold on it. After talking about Danding School, the 2 Lord Taoists roughly mentioned the current situation in the Celestial Pole. In general, there hadn't been any big changes in the past few decades. There were only 2 things worth paying attention to. The first was the rise of Shenqing School, which stood as an equal to Tiandao sect. The second was Danding School returning to the list of great sections. The direct result of Qin Shi and Mo Chenga's return was that Shenqing School flourished like never before. It surpassed Tiandao sect and became the #1 sect in the Celestial Pole. After the 2 of them stayed in Kuanzhong City for several days, Lord Taoist Jinyang's group finally returned. The members of this investigation team had frighteningly high statuses and cultivation bases. All of them were leaders of major sections. Among them there were 4 late nascent soul great cultivators, while the rest were mid-stage nascent soul cultivators. There wasn't even an early-stage nascent soul cultivator. Among these people were Tiandao sect's Lu Dingyuan and Lord Taoist Silence, Shenqing School's Lord Taoist Jinyang, Gujian sect's Venerable Swordsman Yuanying, Biyun sect's Ding Luan, Zhengfa sect's Lord Taoist Wuxia, and so on. Before long, Mo Chenga and Qin Shi met Lord Taoist Jinyang. It had been so many years since they last met, but the appearance of the head Grand Supreme Elder had not changed at all. He was now 1,200 years old. As a great cultivator in the late nascent realm, his cultivation level was profound, and he took good care of himself, so living for another 500 or 600 years wouldn't be a problem. If he could find a way to prolong his life, living for another 700 or 800 years wasn't impossible. At the very least, he could still be in charge of Shenqing School for several hundred years. Lifespan. This was also one of the reasons why the other cultivation groups were even more afraid of Shenqing School. Among the numerous nascent soul cultivators in Shenqing School, Jinyang and Jingha had the highest cultivation levels and were the oldest, but they still had 500 or 600 years to live. Huayan was slightly younger and his cultivation level was also lower, but he also had 200 or 300 years to live. Miaoyi was about 700 years old, while Xianyin was more than 600 years old. The 2 of them were in the prime of their lives. The youngest, Shoujing, Lingxi and Qingwei were even more excessively young. With so many nascent soul cultivators so young, Shenqing School could maintain its prosperity for at least 1,000 years. After learning of their return, Lord Taoist Jinyang was so surprised that he didn't even care about business. After giving some simple instructions, he returned to his temporary residence in Kuanzhong City. Greetings, Senior Marshal Brother Jinyang. No need to be so polite. No need to be so polite. Lord Taoist Jinyang said repeatedly, "It's good that you're back. It's good that you're back." After sizing them up, Lord Taoist Jinyang smiled and said, "It seems you've gained a lot from your trip to Yunzhong. Not only has Qingwei formed her nascent soul, but your realm is also very stable. If Junior Marshal Brother Jinghe knows about this, he'll be very happy." He then asked, "How did you 2 come back? How have you been in the past few decades?" Qin Shi told him about their experiences in the past few years. After listening, Lord Taoist Jinyang sighed with emotion. Then he asked about how they left the Sea of Returning Ruins, arrived in Yuan Province and returned to the Celestial Pole. Lord Taoist Jinyang asked in detail, so Qin Shi also answered in detail, including how they were trapped in the Immortal Palace for several decades, how Mo Chenga encountered the nascent soul heavenly tribulation after she came out, and finally arrived in Yuan Province by accident. She used the transporting formation to return to the Celestial Pole. He didn't mention these things in detail before, so Xianyin and Miaoyi were shocked when they learned about the tribulation. Lord Taoist Jinyang was lost in thought. Nascent soul heavenly tribulation. There was actually a nascent soul heavenly tribulation. Senior Marshal Brother Jinyang, is there a problem? Qin Shi asked. Nothing. Lord Taoist Jinyang stroked his beard and looked at Mo Tiange with a smile. Every time Qingwei advances, she's so different. When she formed her nascent soul, she even encountered the nascent soul heavenly tribulation. This is a good thing. She'll definitely have extraordinary achievements in the future. He then comforted her. Qingwei, don't worry. Your magic weapon was destroyed, so you can just refine it. The school will definitely help you with this matter. Thank you, Senior Marshal Brother Jinyang. Mo Tiange felt warmth in her heart. Having a school as a backer was really different. She was bullied enough in Yunzhong. Now that she returned to the Celestial Pole, she felt like she had someone to rely on and wasn't just a duckweed. No need to thank me. You came back just in time. Lord Taoist Jinyang smiled. All these years that old guy Lu Dingyuan refused to admit defeat. This time he had no choice but to admit defeat. You didn't see his face at that time. It was green all over. Seeing Lord Taoist Jinyang beaming with joy like a child, Mo Tiange and Qin Shi looked at each other and smiled. He and Lu Dingyuan were about the same age. They were both late-stage nascent soul cultivators. They were in charge of the number 1 and number 2 sects in the Celestial Pole and had been fighting openly and covertly for hundreds of years. Being able to suppress the other party was something they would smile even in their dreams. After being happy for a while, Lord Taoist Jinyang put on a serious expression and said, You too, tell me everything in detail again, starting from when you left the Immortal Palace to when you found Yuanzhou. Mo Tiange and Qin Shi looked at each other. They didn't understand what he meant. Qin Shi asked, Senior Marshal Brother Jinyang, is there a problem? This matter is a bit unusual. Tell me first and I'll think about it. Okay. Qin Shi told them what happened after they left the Immortal Palace. In the middle, Lord Taoist Jinyang interrupted him several times and asked him about some details over and over again before letting him continue. When he finally finished, Lord Taoist Jinyang fell into contemplation again. Mo Tiange looked at Qin Shi, and the two of them looked at Lord Taoist Jinyang together, waiting for him to speak. They also discussed this matter many times, but they didn't come to a conclusion. After they left the Immortal Palace, it self-destructed, triggering the collapse of the restrictions in the space. Then came the Heavenly Tribulation. After the Heavenly Tribulation, the continent moved. These things happen one after another. They always felt they had something to do with each other, but they couldn't tell what it was. If Lord Taoist Jinyang could give them an answer, it would save them from making wild guesses. After a long time, Lord Taoist Jinyang withdrew his thoughts, looked at Mo Tiange and said, Qingwei, I'm afraid this matter has a lot to do with you. What? Mo Tiange was confused. What matter are you referring to, Senior Marshal Brother Jinyang? Lord Taoist Jinyang knocked on the table and said, You said after the Heavenly Tribulation, the storm didn't subside and became even fiercer. Then the continent must have moved at this time. Qin Shi nodded slightly. Yes, we've confirmed this time. Then here's the question. What on earth caused the continent to move? There must be a cause for this kind of change in heaven and earth, right? But Mo Tiange frowned and pondered. When we came out, there were already dark clouds outside, so it might not have been caused by the Heavenly Tribulation. Yes. Lord Taoist Jinyang didn't object. The nascent soul realm's Heavenly Tribulation has indeed disappeared in the human world. I've never heard of 4 half-heaven tribulations coming together. But I don't believe 4 half-heaven tribulations could cause the continent to move. Even deification realm's Heavenly Tribulation can't have such great power. The combined power of 3 transformation realms' Heavenly Tribulations and 1 nascent soul formation realm's Heavenly Tribulation couldn't compare to 1 deification realm's Heavenly Tribulation. There was more than 1 deification cultivator in this world. If the power of the Heavenly Tribulation could cause the continent to move, how many times did it have to move in the past hundreds of thousands of years? Then Senior Marshal Brother Jinyang means, aside from the Heavenly Tribulation, what else happened at that time? Mo Tiange thought for a moment. The space where the Immortal Palace was located collapsed. Yes, that's what happened. Lord Taoist Jinyang said, according to the cultivators in Yunzhong, this space should have been torn open when the world changed at the end of the distant past era. It's existed peacefully in the sea of returning ruins for hundreds of thousands of years, so it doesn't make sense for it to collapse as soon as you came out. But before that, you did one thing, the mysterious void cloud formation you mentioned, the space-tearing technique. Chapter 524. What Lord Taoist Jinyang said was just a guess. There was no way to confirm the truth now that the palace had collapsed. Seeing Mo Chenga's worries, Qinshi said, "You don't have to think too much. We had no choice at that time. Who knew this would happen?" Mo Chenga shook her head. "I know. I'm not such a pedantic person. It's just that when the world changed, the continent shifted, and so many people's fates changed because of our unintentional behavior, I feel a little sad." If Lord Daoist Jinyang's guess was right, then when they used the Xuanshu cloud formation to tear the space, they accidentally touched something, causing the destruction of the palace, the collapse of the restriction, and the disappearance of the space. As for this space, it involved some unknown law which led to this change in the world. This conjecture could be said to have no basis, but the events were closely linked, making people feel that it was only natural. Mo Chenga sighed in her heart and stopped thinking about it. It had happened, so it was useless to think about it. After seeing Lord Daoist Jinyang, they set off again to return to Xianqing School. Lord Daoist Jinyang's opinion was the same as Xuanin's and Miao Er's. Xianqing School already had 3 nascent soul cultivators, so they didn't need to stay. Besides, Mo Chenga had just advanced to the nascent soul realm and her magic weapons were destroyed, so it was time for her to stabilize her realm in closed-door meditation. 2 days later they finally saw the gate of Xianqing School. On the vast Mount Taikang, the 6 peaks looked majestic, the sea of clouds was vast, and the immortal aura lingered. Everything was the same as when they left. The difference was that the grand mountain protecting formation on Mount Taikang was almost fully activated, leaving only 1 or 2 exits. The patrolling disciples were several times more vigilant than before, and the atmosphere was solemn. When the patrolling disciples saw the 2 of them, a streak of light flew out from the direction of Soul's retreat peak and flew towards them before the patrolling disciples could greet them. Shoujing Qingwei. It was Lord Daoist Huayan. Senior Martial Brother Huayan. The 2 greeted together. Lord Daoist Huayan nodded with a smile and greeted them. "Senior Martial Brother Jinyang has sent a message. I didn't expect you to come back so soon. How have you been all these years?" Qinshi said, "Thank you for your concern, Senior Martial Brother Huayan. We're lucky." "That's good. Let's go in first." Dao Lord Huayan gestured for the patrolling disciples to continue patrolling and landed on Clear Spring Peak with the 2 of them. Before they arrived at Clear Spring Peak, the 2 of them could already see nearly 100 foundation building disciples lined up neatly on the peak, led by several core formation cultivators. Upon seeing them coming over, the foundation building disciples said in unison, "Welcome back to the mountain, Grandmaster Shou Jing and Grandmaster Qing Wei." Nearly 100 disciples shouted in unison, their voices shaking the heavens. Mo Chenga was startled and turned to look at Lord Daoist Huayan. "Senior Martial Brother Huayan, this is..." Lord Daoist Huayan smiled. "It's a special time. I can only keep things simple. Please don't mind. This is still simple? If he didn't, what would he do?" But then again, from the perspective of the sect, it really wasn't that grand. Without summoning aura refining disciples, these foundation building disciples and core formation cultivators only belonged to Clear Spring Peak. Compared to last time when Qinshi came back after forming his nascent soul, there was simply no comparison. "Welcome back Martial Uncle Shou Jing and Martial Uncle Qingwei." As soon as they landed, the core formation cultivators led by Master Daoist Ming Zhen came up and saluted them respectfully. "Senior martial brothers and sisters, no need to be so polite." Qinshi flicked his sleeves and lifted them up. The core formation cultivators of Clear Spring Peak were all advanced inner disciples of Lord Daoist Jinghe and were much older than him, so he was used to calling them senior martial brothers and sisters even though he had formed his nascent soul. Ming Zhen didn't dare to be arrogant and said respectfully, "Martial Uncle Shou Jing has formed his nascent soul. How can you still call him that? Martial Uncle, please don't call me senior martial brothers and sisters anymore." Qinshi smiled helplessly. Everything about this senior martial brother Ming Zhen was good, but he was a bit pedantic. After he formed his nascent soul, he occasionally met him, but every time he called him that, he had to correct him. Fortunately, apart from Ming Zhen, Su Xin, Chang Kong, and Qing Yuan were more casual and greeted them. Chongyun greets Martial Uncle Shou Jing and Martial Uncle Qingwei. The last core formation cultivator who came up stunned Mo Tienga, then she was pleasantly surprised. Big Brother Yi? This person was Yi Jingwen. They hadn't seen each other for more than 80 years, and he had formed his gold core successfully. Yi Jingwen looked up and said with a smile, "You flatter me. Martial Uncle is already a nascent soul cultivator, so I have to change the way I address you. Master gave me the name Chongyun. Martial Uncle, you can call me by my Taoist name from now on." In front of everyone, Mo Tienga suppressed her excitement and said with a smile, I haven't been back for many years, so I was excited to see an old friend. After all the core formation cultivators of Clear Spring Peak greeted him, Qin turned around and asked, Senior Martial Brother Huayan, is my master in Shanqing Palace? Should we go and greet him now? Lord Taoist Huayan said, Senior Martial Brother Jinghe is in closed-door meditation. I'm afraid he won't see you until a few days later. Closed-door meditation? Qin was stunned, and even Mo Qiange was nervous. My master, don't think too much. Lord Taoist Huayan waved his hand with a smile. Senior Martial Brother Jinghe is only in closed-door meditation to practice secret techniques. There's no other reason. You came back too soon, so he didn't have time to come out. Oh. The two of them breathed a sigh of relief. They were used to their master's sloppy appearance. When he had nothing to do, he would stay in Shanqing Palace and tease the maids. Now that they heard he was in closed-door meditation, they thought of his injury last time. You just came back, so you must be tired. Why don't you take a rest first? Lord Taoist Huayan said, When you've settled down, I'll come to visit you and catch up with you. Qin nodded. Thank you, Senior Martial Brother. Lord Taoist Huayan smiled, cupped his hands, summoned his flying magic weapon, and went back to Soul's Retreat Peak. As soon as Lord Taoist Huayan left, Qin told Ming Zhen to dismiss the disciples. The two of them were about to go back to their cave when a female cultivator in the late stage of the foundation building realm came to greet them. Greetings, Grandmasters. Mo Qiange took a closer look and was surprised. Linbo? Yes. The woman looked gentle and well-mannered. She was Shui Linbo. She looked up and said with a smile, After learning about you, Grandmasters, Linbo and Jinji have tidied up the cave and are waiting for you to come back. Oh, where's Jinji? Shui Linbo smiled. Jinji was so excited that he couldn't sit or sleep for 2 days after learning that you two were back, so I told him to wait in the cave so that he wouldn't be rude in front of others. Mo Qiange glanced at Qin. The two of them felt helpless and amused at the same time. In that case, let's go back now lest he waits for too long. Yes. The three of them returned to the mountain where the cave was. When they opened the stone door, they saw someone rushing out in a hurry. When he saw the two of them, he stopped and suddenly knelt down. Jinji greets Master and Auntie. Jinji. Mo Qiange stepped forward and pulled him up. They hadn't seen each other for decades, but Jinji still looked the same. His cultivation level had improved, and he was now in the peak stage of the foundation building realm. He looked less childish and more mature. He was almost 170 years old now. Auntie. Looking at her, Jinji's eyes were slightly wet. You're finally back. You're finally back. Mo Qiange was also very excited since they hadn't seen each other for many years. After wandering outside for a long time, she missed everything in Shanqing school, not to mention that Jinji was her family. Auntie, are you okay? You guys didn't come back for such a long time, so I was always on tenterhooks. Fortunately, Grandmaster said your natal lanterns were fine. Jinji wiped the corners of his eyes, then said with a smile, Right, I'm really stupid. Now that you're back safe and sound, of course everything's fine. Jinji, the two Grandmasters have returned from afar. Let's go inside first. Shui Linbo's reminder made Jinji come back to his senses. He patted his head and said, Yes, I'm stupid again. Master Andy, let's talk inside. After entering the cave, Mo Qiange looked around. Sure enough, the cave was neat and tidy. Presumably, the two of them had been diligently taking care of it and hadn't slacked off. While looking around the cave, Mo Qiange picked up the tea Shui Linbo brought to her, took a sip, and looked at Shui Linbo with some surprise. Shui Linbo said with a smile, Jinji said Grandmaster Qingwei likes this kind of spiritual tea. I wonder if it suits her taste? Mo Qiange nodded. Thank you. Shui Linbo seemed relieved, bowed her head and retreated. Jinji was about to say something, but when he saw the two of them looking a little tired, he swallowed his words and said, Auntie Master, you've just come back, so you must be tired. I won't bother you anymore. Take a rest first. Call us if you need anything. She patted him on the shoulder to comfort him. You've worked hard all these years. You should also take a rest. Master and Auntie are back, so we'll have plenty of time to talk. Yes. After Jinji left, Mo Qiange looked at his back, waved her hand and set up a soundproof barrier. What's wrong? She asked. Did you keep Shui Linbo to train her to do things? Hearing this, she smiled and put down the teacup in his hand. What else? With her aptitude, do you think she'll accept a disciple? Mo Qiange nodded as if she understood something. You're right. Linbo's aptitude is poor, but she's steady. Among the two of us, Jinji is our only disciple, but Jinji's personality is a bit too pure. Yes. When our cultivation levels are high, it's not convenient for us to do some things by ourselves, so we need our disciples to do things for us. As for Jinji, I don't count on him. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have accepted him as a disciple. With this child's personality, it's better for him to simply cultivate. I don't think it's troublesome to choose a disciple from our sect. Linbua has an unusual relationship with Jinji, so we can't avoid her anyway. It's better to keep her here and let her handle chores for us so that we can concentrate on our cultivation in the future. Over the years, she's been reliable. She's both quick-witted and scheming. If we give her an opportunity, she knows how to seize it. She's a smart person. But Mo Tiange frowned slightly. I think she's very firm in pursuing Dao. Won't this delay her too much? She smiled. What's there to delay? Many disciples beg for her help. With her aptitude, if we don't help her, can she form her gold core? Mo Tiange thought about it and shook her head. Forming her gold core with 5 spiritual roots wasn't a 1 in a million problem. That's it. She's doing things for us, so we'll help her form her gold core. Chapter 525. They hadn't returned for nearly 100 years, so there were many things to deal with. Shui Linbua and Yi Jinji handled the matter of the Immortals' Cave very well, saving them a lot of trouble. Later, they met up with their fellow disciples and reminisced about old times. The two of them were busy for several days. Needless to say, Yi Jingwen had already formed his gold core. His aptitude was good and he had always been diligent in his cultivation. Before Mo Tiange went out to travel, she tried to form her gold core but unfortunately failed. Over the past 100 years, he had tried a few more times and finally succeeded in breaking through not long ago. Guangzhou, Zhanbai, and the others were also doing well. Guangzhou's cultivation level was getting better and better, and he was doing his best to help Zhanbai reach the gold core formation realm. It was said that this junior martial brother Bai had a very good aptitude and a solid foundation. Guangzhou also asked Lord Daoist Huayan for help, so the possibility of him forming his gold core was very high. To Mo Tiange's surprise, after she came back, Luo Fengxue didn't visit her or even ask about her. She felt strange. Could it be that because I formed my nascent soul, she felt it was inconvenient to make friends? With Luo Fengxue's personality, it didn't seem like it. After asking Shui Linbua, she learned that she was also in closed-door meditation to form her gold core. Luo Fengxue's aptitude was also excellent, but she was more interested in power, so she wasn't very diligent in her cultivation. After so many years, she only reached the peak stage of the foundation-building realm. In recent years, a group of core formation cultivators at Xianqing School who had reached the end of their lifespans passed away. At the same time, the younger generation of disciples formed their gold cores one after another, and the high-level cultivators were gradually replacing each other. Yi Jingwen was one of them. He was a little over 200 years old, which was still very young for a core formation cultivator. Morning Sun Peaks by Yinfei had advanced to the core formation realm earlier than Mo Tiange. This junior martial brother Bai had a single spiritual root and successfully advanced to the core formation realm at the age of 130. He could be considered a promising young man. Unfortunately, with Qin Shoujing, Li Lingxi, and Mo Qingwei ahead of him, his cultivation speed could only be considered passable. To Mo Tiange's surprise, junior martial sister Jiang of Drifting Cloud Peak also succeeded in forming her gold core. According to Shui Linbua's report, after experiencing the shock of Bai Yanfei's marriage and Lord Daoist Lingshu's death, this junior sister Jiang put away her unruly temperament and devoted herself to cultivation. At the age of 160, she advanced to the core formation realm. On the contrary, senior martial sister Wu, whom Bai Yanfei married, never succeeded in forming her gold core. After spending a few days with martial uncle Wu, Shui Linbua grew bolder and said to Mo Tiange, "Martial uncle Wu's aptitude is quite good. If he didn't take care of secular affairs for martial uncle Bai every day, maybe he would have succeeded in forming his gold core a few years ago." She spoke implicitly, but Mo Tiange understood what she was trying to say. Senior martial sister Wu was Lord Daoist Miaoi's last disciple, so one could imagine her aptitude. She was slightly older than him and should be around 190 years old. As a nascent soul cultivator's advanced inner disciple, it was very common for her to reach core formation at this age. Back then, junior martial sister Jiang was frustrated in love, and senior martial sister Wu unexpectedly won. Who could have foreseen this day? If Bai Yanfei hadn't chosen senior martial sister Wu, junior martial sister Jiang might not have succeeded in forming her gold core. If she hadn't married Bai Yanfei, Senior Martial Sister Wu might have advanced to the Gold Core Formation realm a long time ago. Bai Yanfei married Senior Martial Sister Wu because he wanted to find a suitable dual cultivation partner. With his single spiritual root, he definitely wouldn't choose a female cultivator who couldn't form her gold core. Today's situation was beyond his expectation. In addition, not everyone in the younger generation successfully formed their gold core. Some people died unexpectedly. That person was Wei Jiasi. Before Mo Chenga formed her gold core, eldest martial sister Han Qingyu, who was under Lord Daoist Xianyin, succeeded in forming her gold core. As for second martial sister Wei Jiasi, she was still stuck in the foundation building realm until she left the mountain. Shui Linbua said she couldn't advance to the gold core formation realm. Seeing that she was getting older and older, she made up her mind to form her gold core by force. As a result, she suffered from chi energy deviation and died unexpectedly. After this incident, the grandmasters of each peak ordered their disciples not to forcibly make realm breakthroughs if their mental state wasn't strong enough. After hearing this news, Mo Chenga was silent for a long time. Although that senior martial sister Wei was arrogant, she wasn't a bad person. It was just that because she was trapped by her emotions and entered a demonic barrier, she ended up like this, which really made people sigh. As for Ruan Mingzhu, her condition had improved a lot in the past few years. Han Qingyu and Luo Fengxue took good care of her, so she had a good life on Sweet Dew Peak. A few days later, when everything was settled, Shangqing Palace finally sent news that Lord Daoist Jinghe had come out of his closed-door meditation. Mo Chenga and Qin Shi were overjoyed. They immediately went to Shangqing Palace to pay their respects. They hadn't been back for more than 80 years. Although the maids in Shangqing Palace still had the same names, the people had changed. The original maids were getting older, so they either went back to concentrate on cultivating or looked for other jobs. After all, although there were many benefits to being a nascent soul grandmaster's maids, they couldn't do it forever. They were already more than 200 years old. If their cultivation levels didn't improve, they would only have 100 years left before they passed away. None of these new maids recognized them. The new Mingxia welcomed them into Shangqing Palace with bewilderment. At first glance, the two of them saw Lord Daoist Jinghe sitting on the dragon throne, flipping through a book. He was obviously more than 1,000 years old, but he still looked the same. He didn't age at all. He had black hair, a short beard, a golden crown, and a brocade robe, giving off a threatening aura of nobility. Even though he was sitting very seriously at the moment, he still gave off a lazy and indulgent aura. Mo Chenga was a bit absent-minded as she watched this scene. It was as if time had never passed and she had returned to the first time she saw this master. Master. Upon seeing them coming in, Lord Daoist Jinghe looked up. In the next moment he threw the book in his hand at them. Two little brats. He scowled and glared at them. You've really grown up. You left and didn't come back. How many years has it been? It's fine if you didn't come back, but you didn't even send a message. Chirp, 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 chirp. The two of them lowered their heads and obediently took the scolding. Looking at the lively and angry master, they couldn't help but smile and feel warmth in their hearts. They'd been wandering outside for so many years. How much did they miss this scene? It was precisely because of the existence of this precious master that Shenqing School was their home. Senior Martial Brother Jinghe, Senior Martial Brother Jinghe. Seeing that he was cursing more and more smoothly and showed no signs of stopping, Lord Daoist Huayan hurriedly stopped him. Enough, enough. With someone trying to smooth things over, Lord Daoist Jinghe snorted and sat back to drink tea to moisten his throat. I'll let you go first. He hadn't cursed like this for a long time. It was so refreshing. Senior Martial Brother Huayan. The two of them saluted Lord Daoist Huayan next to them. Although Lord Daoist Huayan's cultivation level wasn't high, he was much older than them and had a good relationship with Lord Daoist Jinghe, so the two of them behaved respectfully and didn't dare to be rude. Junior martial brothers and sisters, there are no outsiders here, so you don't have to be so polite. Sit down. After Lord Daoist Huayan said that, Mo Chenga and Qin Shi didn't refuse and naturally found a place to sit. Lord Daoist Jinghe glared at them and shouted, Master, I haven't told you to sit yet. The two of them had no choice but to stand up again. Seeing that they were so obedient, Lord Daoist Jinghe nodded with satisfaction. Okay, sit down. The corner of Qin Shi's mouth twitched a little. He resisted the urge to roar and sat down again. Mo Chenga turned her face away and patted her forehead. Okay, tell me what happened. Why didn't you come back for so long? Lord Daoist Jinghe finally asked calmly. He then stared at Qin Shi and added, And you brat, why do you look a few years older after leaving for a few decades? Hearing this, the two of them were a little moved. Everyone saw the change in Qin Shi's appearance, but neither Xianyin nor Xinjiang asked. They probably didn't realize that at his age, his appearance couldn't change at all, but their master noticed it at a glance. Master, Mo Chinga answered first, it's not that I didn't want to come back, but I couldn't. She didn't need to explain the reason why she couldn't come back, right? Qin Shi left the celestial pole to look for her because he found the undersea passage collapsed. Lord Dawish Jingha's face darkened. Then what happened? Don't tell me it took this brat decades to find you. Of course not, but... Qin Shi said helplessly, we couldn't come back. As he spoke, he answered the previous question and briefly told them about being trapped in the immortal palace and returning ruined sea. He had already told these things 3 times. Listening to their experiences, Lord Dawish Jingha looked more and more surprised. In the end he said with jealousy, you two brats, your luck is really good. You can even encounter this kind of fated chance. Ancient psychic magic weapon, divine beast's breath, a deification cultivator's treasure, and a nascent soul puppet. TSK, so many things. What a big profit. If he had this kind of fated chance, why would he be trapped in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm for so many years? As for the dangerous things they encountered along the way, they weren't important. If they wanted to achieve something, they had to go through hardships. In any case, they were very good now. Girl? Lord Dawish Jingha looked at Mo Chinga and sighed. I really don't know if you're unlucky or lucky. When you were building your foundation, you traveled for more than 20 years. You were also trapped by others and couldn't get out, but when you came back, you advanced smoothly. Now that you're in the core formation realm, you're even more troublesome. You actually dared to deal with so many late-stage nascent soul cultivators. In the end, you even profited from misfortune and formed your nascent soul. Mo Chinga smiled. Master, it's because I'm blessed and quick-witted. Pfft. Lord Dawish Jingha glared at her. You're really shameless. Forget it, but he still asked worriedly, is your realm stable after you formed your nascent soul? What's going on with that heavenly tribulation? You're not hurt, right? Mo Chinga stepped forward and reached out her hand. You'll know when you take a look. Lord Dawish Jingha pressed her pulse, and his spiritual aura circulated in her body. He was surprised. His spiritual aura is so solid? Her body is also very tough. Even cultivators who practiced body refining technique can't have this kind of effect. Being reshaped by heavenly thunder is indeed extraordinary. When she built her foundation, she obtained Zhong Muling's 5-spirit body refining technique. When she formed her nascent soul, her heavenly tribulation was also reshaped by heavenly thunder. Whether it was her meridians or her body, they were all tough to a certain extent. In a fight of magical powers in the future, she could be said to have a lot of advantages. Brat, what about you? Lord Dawish Jingha looked at Qin Shi. Were you seriously injured when you crossed the sea? Are you okay now? Qin Shi nodded. Rest assured, master. When I got the vermilion bird bow, my body was tempered by the vermilion bird's breath. My injuries were all healed, and the problem of my unstable foundation was also solved. That's good. This was what he had been worried about. Back then, he didn't help him advance to the middle stage of the nascent soul realm because he was worried he wouldn't be strong enough when he crossed the sea. After he forcibly improved his cultivation level, he was also worried his foundation would be unstable and affect his future cultivation. Now that he knew this matter was solved, Lord Dawish Jingha finally felt relieved. Master, what about you? Have you recovered from your injuries? Mo Chinga asked. Do I look bad to you? Lord Dawish Jingha gave her a supercilious look. You just need to take care of yourself. Don't worry about me. Chapter 526. After greeting her, Lord Daoist Huayan mentioned, by the way, Senior Marshal Brother Xinjiang sent a letter saying that now is a special time, so Qingwei's soul formation ceremony can only be postponed for a while. I hope you can understand. Lord Daoist Xinjiang mentioned this matter before they left Kuanzhong City. Mo Chinga naturally didn't care. She didn't like this kind of occasion, so she wouldn't even hold a soul formation ceremony if it wasn't a tradition. Senior Marshal Brother Huayan, what are you talking about? How can I be so ignorant? After a pause, she continued, I hope the soul formation ceremony can be as simple as possible. I forgot you and Shoujing have the same temperament. Lord Daoist Huayan shook his head with a smile. But this soul formation ceremony can't be skipped. It's very meaningful. Lord Daoist Huayan's words were meaningful. Since Lord Daoist Xianin, every time someone in Shenqing school reached the nascent soul realm, it had a profound meaning. Lord Daoist Xuannin's nascent soul realm represented the beginning of Xianqing School's prosperity. After Qin Shi's nascent soul realm, the number of nascent soul cultivators in Xianqing School finally caught up with that of Tiandao sect. After Qin Shi left, Xianqing School lost one nascent soul cultivator and stabilized the situation. As for Mo Qianga, after she reached the nascent soul realm, the number of nascent soul cultivators in Xianqing School suddenly increased to 8, firmly occupying the position of the number 1 sect in the celestial pole, indicating the coming millennium of prosperity. What surprised outsiders was that among the 4 new nascent soul cultivators, 3 were Lord Daoist Jinghe's disciples. Thinking of this, Lord Daoist Jinghe couldn't hide his complacency. One sect has 4 nascent soul cultivators. Who in the celestial pole can do that? That old man Song Feng is known as the number 1 cultivator in the celestial pole, but he doesn't even have a proper disciple. Ah! Hearing Lord Daoist Jinghe's laughter, Qin Shi's mouth twitched again, and Mo Qianga turned her face away. Only Lord Daoist Huayan smiled. He was completely used to it. After Lord Daoist Jinghe finished laughing, Lord Daoist Huayan continued, "By the way, Qingwei, according to the rules of Xianqing School, after advancing to the nascent soul realm, you can occupy a peak alone, but we've never had more than 6 nascent soul cultivators in all these years." When Shoujing returned from forming his nascent soul, he went into closed-door cultivation to stabilize his realm. He didn't plan to take over the peak of drifting clouds. When Shoujing was not around, junior brother Lingxi happened to form his nascent soul. After some discussion, we decided to give the peak of drifting clouds to him, so... Mo Qianga waved her hand. "Senior martial brothers, you don't have to feel embarrassed about this matter. I'm fine as I am right now." "Yes, senior martial brother Huayan," Qin Shi said, "when I formed my nascent soul, peak of drifting clouds was still empty, but I didn't want to move there. Now Qianga is naturally with me." Guarding a peak was really not in line with their personalities. Besides, they only had one disciple, Yi Jinji. Including Shui Linbua, there were only 4 people living in the cave, so there was no need for them to occupy a peak alone. Xianqing School only had 6 peaks in total, so they couldn't possibly move the 2 of them to the symbolic main peak, right? I said you don't have to worry about this kind of thing. Xianin has gone to Sweet Dew Peak, so I'll leave 2 disciples to inherit his legacy, okay? Lord Daoist Jinghe said indifferently. If he hadn't nodded, the others wouldn't have been able to assign the peak of drifting clouds to Li Lingxi while Qin Shi was still alive. However, Lord Daoist Huayan felt that it was better to tell them about this matter. After talking about some chores, Lord Daoist Huayan got up and left. Lord Daoist Jinyang wasn't here, and Lord Daoist Jinghe was like this, so the task of presiding over Xianqing School fell to Lord Daoist Huayan. Although other chores were handled by the head of the core formation realm, when it came to important matters, he had to make decisions. After Lord Daoist Huayan left, Lord Daoist Jinghe put away his indifferent expression and waved his hand to lay a soundproof barrier. "Tell me, Qianga, what happened to your magic weapon?" "Master." Mo Qianga wanted to say something, but in the end she just sighed. Lord Daoist Jinghe waved his hand. "The nascent soul heavenly tribulation is both a curse and a blessing. It's not necessarily a bad thing for your magic weapon to be destroyed. You'll stand at a higher starting point and start anew. You'll be better than before." "Yes, Master." Mo Qianga was sincerely moved by such a serious comfort. She thought for a while and began to talk about her idea. "Master, I've thought about it. A bird in hand is better than 100 birds in the bush, and the quality of magic weapons is more important than the quantity. My natal magic weapon itself is very powerful, but I've never been able to fully exert its power. It's better to master the heaven and earth fan than to refine a new magic weapon." And Lord Daoist Jinghe nodded. "You're right. Most of your senior martial brother Shoujing's divine power is on the 3-yang real fire sword, and my real killing move is also on the Li Fire Gourd, my natal magic weapon. The so-called natal magic weapon's biggest advantage is that it can grow stronger with me. If I abandon it and use other magic weapons, I'll be neglecting the essentials." Hearing this, Mo Qianga blushed a little. In the whole core formation realm, she didn't pay enough attention to her natal magic weapon. Instead, she spent a lot of time on miscellaneous arts. Although her overall strength wasn't weak, she didn't exert her full strength. "Master," Qin Shi said, "just now, senior martial brother Huayan was here, so I didn't explain some things in detail. I suspect Qianga's natal magic weapon has something to do with the Azure Dragon." "Azure Dragon?" Mo Qianga felt a little guilty. "In fact, when I was in the foundation building realm, I got the Azure Dragon's bone." She didn't tell him everything about that experience and only told him the gist of it. Otherwise Lord Daoist Jinghe would have jumped up. The Azure Dragon's bone. What kind of fated chance was that? The Azure Dragon's bone? Lord Daoist Jinghe didn't react for a moment. Qin, she said, one of the 5 spirits, the Azure Dragon of the East. Lord Daoist Jinghe was shocked and asked again, is it the same as your vermilion bird Bao, the remains of a distant past divine beast? Yes. Mo Qianga took out a piece of the remaining dragon bone from her Qingquan ring and handed it to him. Master, take a look. Lord Daoist Jinghe took it. Although it was only a small piece of broken bone, it had a strong wood element aura, and that vast and holy spiritual aura blew against his face. It really is a divine beast. Although he had never seen a divine beast such a vast aura, what else could it be other than a divine beast? Lord Daoist Jinghe held the piece of dragon bone and sighed. Even an old monster in the late stage of the nascent soul realm who had lived for thousands of years like him had never seen a divine beast's bone. He really didn't know what kind of luck this damn girl had. Qin, she said, Tiange's heaven and earth fan is actually refined from dragon bones. Lord Daoist Jinghe shifted his gaze, and Mo Qianga very consciously handed the heaven and earth fan to him. Strange. After staring for a long time, Lord Daoist Jinghe frowned. There's no Azure Dragon's breath on the fan at all. This is also something we don't understand, Qin, she said. I originally thought the Azure Dragon's breath disappeared during the process of refining the magic weapon, but when Tianga transcended her tribulation, the image of the Azure Dragon soared from the fan and blocked the heavenly thunder. That actually happened. Lord Daoist Jinghe found it unbelievable. But after that, we still didn't find the Azure Dragon's breath. Mo Qianga looked confused. Master, when the Azure Dragon appeared, its breath was very strong. Moreover, when I formed my gold core, I once encountered a nascent soul devil cultivator. That devil cultivator accidentally hit the heaven and earth fan, but he was forced to retreat. From this, it can be seen that the Azure Dragon's breath definitely exists. But where did the Azure Dragon breath go? After staring for a long time, Lord Daoist Jinghe returned the heaven and earth fan and the dragon bone to her and said sternly, Master can't answer this question. This is your natal magic weapon and only you can understand it deeply. It hasn't been long since you formed your nascent soul, so it's time for you to stabilize your realm. You should spend 10 years to slowly stabilize your realm and continuously refine magic weapons. One day, when you know the heaven and earth fan like the back of your hand, you'll be able to find the hidden Azure Dragon's breath. Mo Qianga took the heaven and earth fan and the dragon bone and nodded. I understand, Master. No, Qin, she objected. Qianga, don't forget the 200-year agreement. If you delay it, who knows what accident will happen. What 200-year agreement? Lord Daoist Jinghe didn't understand and stared at Mo Qianga. Girl, what else are you hiding from Master? Mo Qianga felt even more guilty. In the beginning she didn't trust this master enough, but after a series of things happened she felt it was inappropriate to say it. Qin, she sighed. Let me tell you. He roughly told her about Wanderer Ziwei and said in the end, I learned about this when I was on Demonic Mountain. I originally planned to let Master take a look at it and help him think of a way, but who knew it would be so coincidental. When I came back from Demonic Mountain, Master was seriously injured, so I put this matter aside. Later, I thought there was still a lot of time, so it wouldn't be a big deal to travel first. Besides, Wanderer Ziwei said if I helped him fulfill his wish, he'd give me all his life savings, so even if there was a way to remove the restriction, I might as well try it. So I delayed it until now. Lord Daoist Jinghe rolled his eyes angrily. In fact, what she thought wasn't wrong. When she went to Yunzhong, she originally planned to travel for a few years or a dozen years. After she came back, she still had more than 100 years, so it wouldn't be too late to slowly think of a way. Who knew she wouldn't come back for so many years? Come here and let me see. Seeing Mo Qianga lowering her head guiltily, Lord Daoist Jinghe said helplessly. Yes, Master. Lord Daoist Jinghe placed his hand on the top of her head and said, Don't resist. Master wants to enter your sea of knowledge. She was already a nascent soul cultivator now. If she resisted, a serious accident might happen when she entered her sea of knowledge. Mo Qianga obediently closed her eyes and lowered her guard. Then she felt a force that didn't belong to her appear in her sea of knowledge. This force swam in her sea of knowledge slowly and cautiously. 4 high-level cultivators, the importance of the sea of knowledge was comparable to that of the nascent soul realm or even greater. If they didn't absolutely trust someone, they wouldn't allow the other person to enter their sea of knowledge because once the sea of knowledge was invaded, their consciousness might be destroyed. This was equivalent to possession. After a while, this force withdrew from her sea of knowledge, and Chenga opened her eyes. Master? Qin asked impatiently, how was it? Lord Daoist Jinghe looked solemn. He paced back and forth with his hands clasped behind his back. In the end he shook his head and sighed. This wanderer Ziwei is indeed extraordinary. I can't do anything about the imprint he left behind. Chenga wasn't very disappointed. Wanderer Ziwei already said this was his unique technique. Only deification cultivators could remove it. Just a trace of his divine sense could be preserved for as long as 200 years, and it could even continue to be preserved. It was clear that he had his own uniqueness in divine sense techniques. How could a so-called unique secret technique be easily removed by others? This wanderer Ziwei has only tried to break through to the deification realm. He hasn't truly reached the deification realm, but he already has this kind of ability. How powerful would a real deification cultivator be? Lord Daoist Jinghe muttered to himself. Chapter 527. Chenga didn't know how powerful a deification cultivator was, but she clearly remembered the incomparably powerful spiritual aura pressure when Zhong Muling and Yuan Bao waved their hands. Zhong Muling said that in this world he was already a godlike existence. As for nascent soul cultivators, the higher their cultivation level, the stronger they were, and the more they feared the world, let alone compare themselves to gods. What kind of great divine power did they have to be able to say that? Unfortunately, there were only a few deification cultivators, so how could they meet them whenever they wanted? This question could only be answered when they entered the deification realm themselves. After the three of them finished their discussion, Chenga and Qin returned to her cave. Then Chenga asked Shui Limbwa to summon the steward of the steward's hall. Seeing that it was a summon from a new nascent soul Lord Daoist, the steward's hall didn't dare to neglect it, and the steward's elder came in person. Greetings, martial uncles. What can I do for you? The current steward's elder, whose Daoist name was Shi, came from Qinghuan Peak. He was quite old, but he was still in the middle stage of the core formation realm. Basically, it was impossible for him to advance to the nascent soul realm, and he only had 100 or 200 years left in his lifespan. In the various halls of Shenqing School, except for the sect head who chose young and strong core formation cultivators, the other steward's elders were like Shi. They didn't have much lifespan left and were steady in handling affairs. These senior core formation cultivators were experienced, so they were tactful and reliable in handling affairs. Their cultivation levels weren't very high, and most of them had no hope of advancing to the nascent soul realm, so they were very willing to serve as stewards elders so that they could obtain some benefits for their clans or disciples before they passed away. No need to be so polite. Qin went straight to the point and asked, before I left the mountain, I entrusted a task to the steward's hall. How's it going now? When he heard the summon, Elder Shi had already thought about the reason. Fortunately, he was very cautious at that time and personally supervised it. Martial Uncle Shoujing, are you talking about the matter of Xuanji School? Yes. What did you find out? After receiving confirmation, Elder Shi took out a jade slip and presented it to Qin Shi. Martial Uncle, over the years our Steward's Hall disciples have carefully investigated Mount Yuzhu. The predecessor of the Profound Theory sect was the Tianliang sect. This sect specialized in the art of mechanisms and arrays, but it was exterminated a few thousand years ago. Later on, the remaining disciples of the Tianliang sect established the Xuanji sect. It existed for a long time and even produced a nascent soul cultivator. It was a resurgence for a time, but it lacked successors. In the end, it slowly declined and was finally destroyed due to internal strife. After that, small sects such as the Ghost Valley sect, the Seven Arcane sect, and the Yin-Yang sect appeared in the Jade Pillar Mountain area. They claimed to have inherited their heritage from the Xuanji sect, but whether it was the cultivation of the disciples or the art of formations, they could not be compared to the Xuanji sect of the past. The disciples of the Steward's Hall found scattered records in these small sects, and they also found the former residents of the Profound Secret sect. After spending some effort, they were finally able to confirm that the nascent soul stage senior of the Profound Secret sect had disappeared in the far west. These are the clues found by the duty hall, please have a look. Qin took the jade slip and inserted his divine sense into it. A moment later he passed the jade slip back to Mo Tienga. After reading it, Mo Tienga nodded and said, "Thank you for your hard work." Hearing this, Elder Shi knew the two nascent soul Lord Taoists were satisfied with what she had done, so she smiled and said, "It's our duty to work for martial uncles. I don't dare to say it's hard work. Qin smiled, glanced at Shui Linbua and said, "It was thousands of years ago. You must have spent a lot of effort to find these clues. These are your rewards. Take them and divide them among yourselves." After taking the Qinghuan bag from Shui Linbua, Elder Shi searched it roughly and found several bottles of medicinal pills and a lot of spirit stones. She was very excited and said, "Thank you for your rewards, martial uncles." Everyone in the Shenqing sect knew that martial uncle Shoujing's pill concocting skills were the best among the nascent soul lord Taoists, so the medicinal pills given to her must be extraordinary. "Okay, you can go now." "Yes, I'll take my leave." Elder Shi bowed respectfully and left under Shui Linbua's lead. "How was it?" Qin asked after Shui Linbua also left. Mo Chinga pondered and said, "The clues found by the steward's hall are very reliable, and they even have a map attached. We can go and see for ourselves." "Okay." Qin agreed. There are many dangerous places in the far west desert that they can't deal with their cultivation levels. We can only do the rest by ourselves. After all, it was thousands of years ago, so Mo Chinga didn't have much hope for the steward's hall. It was already beyond her expectations that they could do this. The people of the steward's hall were better at inquiring about information and finding clues than them, but there were some things they couldn't do because of their cultivation levels. "Then when do we leave?" "No hurry," Qin said. "The place where a nascent soul cultivator died must be a dangerous place. No matter how anxious you are, you have to recover some strength before you can go." "Okay." Mo Chinga thought about it and followed his advice. "Then I'll nourish the heaven and earth fan first. And I can also practice the great heavenly thunder spell." After making this decision, Mo Chinga began to live in seclusion again. The spirit-quenching jade buried in the virtual sky world had begun to produce spirit-quenching water. With an inexhaustible supply of spirit-quenching water, the two of them re-refined their magic weapons. After being refined with the spirit-quenching water, the magic weapons' impurities were all removed and their power increased. Especially Qin's 3-yang real fire sword, which he had nourished for 200 years. Their minds were connected, so it was more handy now. Seeing this, Mo Chinga had great expectations for the re-refined heaven and earth fan. After trying it out with other magic weapons, she took the spirit-quenching water and began a short-term closed-door meditation to refine the heaven and earth fan. Inside the closed-door meditation room, she stretched out her hand. Spiritual aura gathered in her palm, and the heaven and earth fan slowly emerged. After this period of nourishment, the heaven and earth fan regained some of its spirituality, but it was still far from the peak period when it was full of spiritual aura. She opened the fan. The flowers, birds, mountains, and rivers on it seemed to have withered and were no longer vibrant. The natal magic weapons of cultivators in the celestial pole probably didn't use as extravagant materials as she did. The ribs of the fan were made of azure dragon bones, and the surface of the fan was made of natural silk brocade. The pigments used included treasures like Qiyun stone and bewitching moonlight stone. Finally, 1,000-year-old chalcedony was used to increase its toughness. It wasn't easy for ordinary core formation cultivators to get even one of these materials, let alone the bones of divine beasts. If those nascent soul cultivators found out, they would fight over them. Mo Chinga let go of the heaven and earth fan and took out a gourd. This gourd contained the spirit-quenching water taken from the immortal palace. Although the spirit-quenching jade buried in the virtual sky world had begun to produce spirit-quenching water, it hadn't been for long and wasn't as pure as the spirit-quenching water in the immortal palace. She used the newly produced spirit-quenching water to refine other magic weapons, but the heaven and earth fan was her natal magic weapon, so its importance couldn't be compared to other magic weapons. She put the gourd aside, sat cross-legged, closed her eyes and adjusted her breath. After a great circle, she adjusted herself to the best state and made a hand seal. A naked baby with a face similar to hers appeared above her head. This was her nascent soul. This nascent soul was white and tender, its spiritual aura was solid, and it was in a state of full of energy. At this moment, it climbed on top of her head and sat cross-legged. As the spiritual aura ran, the spiritual aura on the nascent soul's body became denser and denser. It suddenly opened its mouth and spewed out nascent fire, wrapping the heaven and earth fan. Inside the nascent fire, the heaven and earth fan rotated slowly. A red mist gradually appeared around it, and the whole surface of the fan flashed with an intoxicating fluorescent light. The fluorescent light became more and more stable. Mo Chinga waved her sleeve, and the gourd also flew up. The mouth of the gourd popped open and water shot out of the gourd. Mo Chinga pointed with her spiritual aura. The water seemed to be pulled, shooting toward the heaven and earth fan and merging with the red mist. By the time the spirit-quenching water in the gourd was completely emptied, the heaven and earth fan had been surrounded by the water curtain formed by the spirit-quenching water. The nascent fire was still refining the heaven and earth fan. The spirit-quenching water gradually boiled and finally turned into mist. Inside the nascent fire and the mist, the heaven and earth fan was still rotating. Slowly, a tiny speck of dust was peeled off and merged with the mist. Then the second speck, the third speck. As time passed, the spiritual aura in Emo Chenga's body gradually became empty, and her nascent soul also gradually withered. The speck of dust in the heaven and earth fan became less and less. In the end, the whole surface of the fan was bright and clean, without any impurities. Emo Chenga breathed a sigh of relief and was about to put away the nascent fire. Suddenly, her whole body trembled as if she felt something. She swallowed a high-grade restorative panacea to replenish the spiritual aura in her body and let her nascent soul continue to spurt out the nascent fire. After the impurities were removed and the nascent fire refined it, an extremely pure aura slowly appeared around the heaven and earth fan. This aura was pure and boundless. It only lasted for a breath, but it made people feel endless vitality. Azure Dragon's breath. Upon discovering this, Emo Chenga was extremely excited. Azure Dragon's breath finally appeared. Was it because there were too many impurities in the heaven and earth fan before, so the Azure Dragon's breath couldn't appear? No matter what the reason was, she finally found the Azure Dragon's breath. The nascent fire continued, and the Azure Dragon's breath became stronger and stronger. In the end, even Qin Shi, who was outside the closed-door meditation room, was alarmed. He had the vermilion bird's breath in his body, so he was much more sensitive to the breath of divine beasts than others. He was sure that it was the Azure Dragon's breath. However, Emo Chenga was still in closed-door meditation room, so he couldn't enter and could only wait outside. What did Emo Chenga do in the end? Did she finally find the secret of the heaven and earth fan? The Azure Dragon's breath gathered around the heaven and earth fan. This breath was colorless at first, but when it reached a certain level, it gradually turned blue. This blue color became stronger and stronger until it finally transformed into a small azure dragon. The image of the azure dragon. Emo Chenga had seen Qin Shi use the vermilion bird bow. When the vermilion bird's breath was shot by the vermilion bird bow, it would transform into the vermilion bird to attack. During the heavenly tribulation, the azure dragon's breath soared from the heaven and earth fan also had the appearance of an azure dragon. It seemed that she finally found the real killer move of the heaven and earth fan. However, her surprise hadn't ended yet. The image of the azure dragon became more and more solid, almost as if it was real, and the scales on its body shone with a blue light. Roar! The azure dragon opened its mouth and spat out a ball of golden lightning which flew towards her nascent soul. The golden lightning of the heavenly tribulation. While Emo Chenga was stunned, this ball of golden lightning had already surrounded her nascent soul. However, what was surprising was that it didn't cause any harm. Her nascent soul opened its mouth and swallowed this ball of golden lightning. As for the azure dragon, after releasing the golden lightning, it circled around and imprinted itself on the surface of the heaven and earth fan. Chapter 528. Qin Shi sat in the small bamboo hall of the virtual sky world and looked at the closed-door meditation room next to him. In the closed-door meditation room, the spiritual aura fluctuations gradually stabilized and finally subsided. Then the door opened and Emo Chenga stepped out with a happy face. "How is it?" Qin Shi asked. The azure dragon's breath. After returning to the small bamboo hall and sitting down, Emo Chenga waved her hand to open the heaven and earth fan and handed it to him. After being purified by the spirit-tempering water, the heaven and earth fan's spiritual aura was pure and colorful. But this wasn't the point. Qin Shi saw at a glance that the azure dragon pattern appeared on the fan, emitting a pure and vast azure dragon's breath. This is, after I refined the heaven and earth fan again, the azure dragon's breath appeared, Emo Chenga said. Maybe the original heaven and earth fan's level wasn't high enough, so the azure dragon's breath was hidden. Emo Chenga wasn't guessing randomly. The vermilion bird bow was the most precious treasure of the ancient glacial ice palace. Not to mention the fact that the forging techniques of the ancient glacial ice palace were much more advanced than those of today. Just the fact that the glacial ice palace had such a large spirit-tempering pool meant that the treasures they refined would definitely be extremely pure. Although the materials used for her heaven and earth fan weren't inferior, the refining technique was incomparable. It hadn't been purified by the spirit-tempering water, so it certainly couldn't be compared to the vermilion bird bow. Fortunately, the heaven and earth fan was her natal magic weapon and connected to her mind so it could be refined and improved. In time it might be comparable to the vermilion bird bow. She thought for a moment and understood. He said with a smile, "In any case, I finally found the azure dragon's breath. If you nourish it well, the power of the heaven and earth fan will be greatly improved." Wuxia was full of confidence about this. The next moment she thought of another thing and said hesitantly, "There's one more thing I'm not sure about." "What is it?" Wuxia didn't answer immediately. Instead, she made a hand seal and summoned a golden thunderbolt from her dantian. "This is..." She was stunned. "Why is this aura so similar to the golden thunderbolt of the ninth tribulation that day?" "Yes." Wuxia reached out and held the golden lightning. This golden lightning wasn't big, it was only the size of a fist. However, the terrifying might it contained was exactly the same as the heavenly thunder that day. After the azure dragon appeared, it opened its mouth and spat out this golden lightning. She thought for a moment then smiled. "I understand." That day the azure dragon faced the enemy and swallowed this ball of golden lightning, then hid inside the fan of heaven and earth. During this period of time, the azure dragon has assimilated the golden lightning, and after you re-refine the fan of heaven and earth, the azure dragon has truly recognized you as its master, so this ball of golden lightning is also equivalent to being refined by you. Heavenly tribulation lightning was sentient, but this ball of golden lightning was so docile in her hands. Clearly she had already refined it. "I see." Wuxia stared at the golden lightning in her hand. "Then this ball of golden lightning? I can use it to cultivate the great heavenly thunder technique," she continued. "I've read that cultivation technique. This was a secret technique created by a powerful ancient cultivator who had undergone a heavenly tribulation based on the characteristics of heavenly lightning. Although this secret technique could allow one to cultivate heavenly thunder on their own, if one already had a high-grade thunder dharma spell, it would be even easier. Now that you've obtained this ball of golden lightning, you can use it to cultivate the great heavenly thunder technique. This golden lightning itself is heavenly thunder, so it complements each other." Wuxia had also read about the great heavenly thunder technique. The most difficult part of this secret technique was the beginning. First, one had to cultivate pure heavenly thunder. Then, with this ball of heavenly thunder as the foundation, one had to slowly increase the power of the heavenly thunder. Although the great heavenly thunder technique could allow one to cultivate high-grade thunder dharma spells, it wasn't real heavenly thunder after all. Now, however, she had a real heavenly thunder in her hands. Moreover, it was the most powerful type of heavenly thunder, golden lightning. Just like that, she inadvertently passed the most difficult hurdle. Thinking up to this point, Wuxia felt her luck was really too good. The nascent soul heavenly tribulation was originally a narrow escape. Fortunately, she had Qin Shi and Jing Xingji's full help, so she safely passed. After she passed the heavenly tribulation, it was a blessing in disguise. Not only did she have the heavenly thunder to temper her body, but she also stimulated the true power of the heaven and earth fan and obtained a ball of heavenly thunder. Next, you should enter closed-door meditation and cultivate. With this ball of heavenly thunder, it won't take long for your great heavenly thunder technique to take shape. At that time we'll leave for the far west. Okay. Wuxia also knew that Wanderer Ziwei's matter was pressing. If she wanted to go to the far west, she had to restore her strength, so she had to seize the time to enter closed-door meditation. Qin Shi's gaze softened. He reached out and gently embraced her. "This time your closed-door meditation will probably take several years. I won't be able to accompany you in the virtual sky world. You have to be careful." Wuxia chuckled softly. "We're all people who pursue the great Tao. How can we focus on companionship day and night? Don't worry, Fei and the others are here." Qin Shi responded. After a while, he sighed with satisfaction. "I used to think that pursuing the path to immortality was a lonely thing. I didn't understand why those people wanted to find Tao companions. Now I understand that meeting you is really the luckiest thing that happened to me in my life." Wuxia's heart stirred. She understood Qin Shi's personality too well. No matter how deep his feelings were, he wouldn't forget the great Tao he pursued his whole life. Being able to say such a thing was already his limit. "Senior Marshal Brother, no need to say anything. I understand." After reporting Azure Dragon and Heavenly Thunder to Lord Taoist Jinghe and informing Lord Taoist Huayan, Wuxia once again entered closed-door meditation. If there were no accidents, this closed-door meditation wouldn't be too long. The nourishment of heaven and earth fan was a long-term thing. Mo Chenga only needed it to recover its former spirituality. As for the great heavenly thunder spell, it would take only a few years for her to gain its initial power. Time was tight. She couldn't wait until she mastered the great heavenly thunder spell, which would take at least several decades. But it wouldn't take too long to cultivate it to its initial level. She stayed outside, cultivating while paying attention to the situation in the celestial pole. The appearance of the new continent posed a huge threat to the celestial pole. Although Lord Taoist Jinyang had expressed that they weren't needed for the time being, they might have to participate in the war if the situation changed. In any case, Xianqing School had provided for them for so many years, so they had to contribute when it was time. Several months later, Lord Taoist Miaoi returned from Kuanzhong City. After receiving the news of her return, all the nascent soul cultivators in Xianqing School except for Mo Tiange went to Green Phoenix Peak, including Lord Taoist Lingxi, who had just stabilized his realm and came out of closed-door meditation. Lord Taoist Lingxi was about the same age as Qin Shi. He looked like a young man in his early 20s, but his temperament was completely different from Qin Shi's. He looked gentle and even a bit gentle. He arrived at the same time as Qin Shi. Upon seeing him, he bowed and said, "Senior Martial Brother Shoujing, long time no see. How are you?" When Qin Shi and Mo Tiange returned to Xianqing School, he was still in closed-door meditation, so today was the first time they met. Qin Shi returned the salute and said politely, "Thank you for your concern, Junior Martial Brother Lingxi. I've been well these years. It's been several years since we last met. Congratulations on successfully forming your nascent soul." Lord Taoist Lingxi smiled and said, "I heard Junior Martial Sister Qingwei also succeeded in forming her nascent soul. Congratulations to you too." Qin Shi smiled and didn't say anything. He and Lingxi were only 1 year apart and entered Xianqing School almost at the same time, so they were often compared to each other. Especially after the two of them successfully formed their gold cores, they became the symbol of the new generation of Xianqing School's geniuses. This kind of long-term competition formed a unique relationship between them. They both paid attention to each other and secretly competed against each other. Although Lingxi gradually fell behind after forming his gold core and couldn't compete with him after forming his nascent soul, Qin Shi didn't look down on him. Because he always had a master to look after him, Lingxi lost his master not long after he built his foundation. Since then he had been cultivating alone. Back then there was also a nascent soul cultivator guarding Sweet Dew Peak. That person was Lingxi's master, Lord Taoist Tianyun. Lord Taoist Tianyun was also in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. He was very powerful, so he was able to snatch Lingxi, a disciple with a single spiritual root. Unfortunately, Lord Taoist Tianyun unexpectedly died one time when he went out. With Lingxi's aptitude, Lord Taoist Jinyang intended to let him choose another master to avoid delaying his cultivation. However, Lingxi was a person who valued relationships and was unwilling to leave Sweet Dew Peak. Whether he had a nascent soul master or not, the impact was too great. From then on, although Lingxi worked hard, he could no longer compete with Qin Shi. Frankly speaking, Qin Shi and Lingxi's personalities were completely different, so they only maintained their relationship as fellow disciples. However, they were both magnanimous people who admired each other. The two of them entered Lord Taoist Miaoi's Immortal's cave, greeted each other and took their seats. After a while, Lord Taoist Huayan and Lord Taoist Jinghe also arrived. "Miaoi, why did you come back? Where's that old man Jinyang? And that brat Xianin, is he alright?" Lord Taoist Jinghe made a lot of noise as soon as he arrived. In the whole Xianqing School he was the only one who called Miaoi like that. Miaoi was 300 years younger than him, and he watched her advance to the nascent soul realm step by step. Jinyang was in the same generation as him, and Xianin was his disciple. Lord Taoist Miaoi laughed when she heard that. "Senior Martial Brother Jinghe, can't you say something nice? The war is about to break out at any moment. In any case, it's better to get some good luck." "What good luck? We're not mortals. Why would we believe that?" Lord Taoist Jinghe didn't take it seriously at all. He waved his hand and said, "You know I'm impatient. Tell me, did something happen?" Lord Taoist Miaoi sighed helplessly and then said seriously, "Senior Martial Brothers and Junior Martial Brothers, I have good news and bad news. Which one do you want to hear first?" "Whichever one." Lord Taoist Jinghe hurriedly said, "Tell me quickly." Lord Taoist Miaoi felt even more helpless and had to say, "Then I'll tell you the good news first. For now we can't fight with the beast cultivators. The ghost cultivators on the new continent don't get along with the beast cultivators, so the war won't break out before we solve this problem. That's good. Hearing this news, Lord Taoist Huayan breathed a sigh of relief. In this case we also have time to prepare. If we're fully prepared, the beast cultivators may not be able to take advantage of us. And? Lord Taoist Miaoi nodded. Compared with the beast cultivators, human beings had an advantage in pill concocting, tool refining, talisman techniques, formations and other miscellaneous skills. Once the mountain protecting formation was fully activated and the resources were in place, the beast cultivators might not be able to defeat them even if they spent several times the manpower and resources. What's the bad news? Don't worry. Lord Taoist Miaoi said with a smile, I haven't finished the good news. We've found a new continent, and there are many Dao cultivators living on this continent. We have an alliance. Chapter 529. This continent is in the original celestial pole, not far from the northeast forest. We've sent people to investigate it. It's Yunzhong where Shoujing and Qingwei have been. Yunzhong? Even Lord Taoist Jinghe was shocked by this news. So, we can travel with Yunzhong at will? Yes. The nascent soul Taoists were delighted. This was really good news. In any case, humans and demonic cultivators were natural enemies. It was impossible for them to help demonic cultivators instead of humans. Qin Shi frowned, but there was no joy on his face. Miaoi asked curiously, Shoujing, what's the problem? Qin Shi asked, are you really talking about Yunzhong? Yes, we have confirmed it. Miaoi paused and said, we know what you and Qingwei experienced in Yunzhong. Although you have some disagreements with the big sects in Yunzhong, it's just a dispute of interests, not a big hatred. Now that you've returned to your sects, I don't think they'll turn against us because of this. Qin Shi's expression still didn't relax, so Lord Taoist Huayan asked, is there any secret? Qin Shi didn't answer immediately but asked again, Senior Sister Miaoi, how much do you know about the situation in Yunzhong? Miaoi said, we've only had preliminary contact with it and haven't gone deep. She asked with concern, what? Is there a problem? Qin Shi pondered for a moment and said, Yunzhong is a bit bigger than the celestial pole. It has more spirit veins and resources than the celestial pole, and more big forces. Not to mention the cultivators of Devil Dao, Confucianism, and Buddhism. Each of the 5 big Taoist sects has more than 5 nascent soul cultivators, and Jian sect has more than a dozen nascent soul cultivators. A dozen nascent soul cultivators? Lord Taoist Huayan was shocked. In the tens of thousands of years since Shenqing School was founded, it had 6 nascent soul cultivators at most. Now it had 8, which was unprecedented in its history. Unexpectedly, it couldn't compare with the big sects in Yunzhong at all. Yes, there are more than 100 nascent soul cultivators in Yunzhong. The nascent soul Taoists looked at each other with serious expressions. They all knew that Yunzhong was stronger than Celestial Pole, but they didn't expect him to be this strong. There were about 60 nascent soul cultivators in the Celestial Pole. Even if there were some who lived in seclusion, there wouldn't be more than 70. Compared with Yunzhong, the number of nascent soul cultivators was 1/3 less. Qin Shi continued to say, the forest where the beast cultivators live is connected to our Kunwu mountain range. Even if we don't want to fight with them, we can't avoid it. But to Yunzhong, what did this have to do with them? It's true that they won't help the demon cultivators, but if we fight the demon cultivators, they won't suffer any losses. Why not just sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight while we reap the benefits? It's best if we fight with the Yao cultivators until both sides are injured. At that time, we have no choice but to submit to them and lose our autonomy. All the nascent soul cultivators fell silent. This was indeed something they didn't expect. Before the world changed, Yunzhong and the Celestial Pole were separated by the South Sea and couldn't communicate with each other. Even nascent soul cultivators like them only knew that Yunzhong was slightly stronger than the Celestial Pole, but they didn't know it was this much stronger. Shoujing's words aren't without reason. Dao Lord Miaoi spoke up a moment later. However, the situation might not necessarily be that bad. Lord Dao Lord Huayan asked, Junior Martial Sister Miaoi, do you have any other news? Miaoi said, I didn't tell you the bad news just now, but now it seems it might not be bad news. She paused and said, in addition to Yunzhong, we also found something else this time. The devil path is restless again. Hearing this, everyone was surprised. Even Lord Dao Lord Jinghe's hand holding the teacup stopped. The devil path? Demonic mountain? Yes, Miaoi said. This time, Tiandao sect only left 2 early-stage nascent soul cultivators to guard the gate. The other 4 have all gone to Kuanzhong City. Originally, they were very relieved with Demonic Mountain as a barrier, but they didn't expect a group of disciples of the Devil Path to suddenly attack Mount Yuheng not long ago. This time, all the cultivation groups in the Celestial Pole united to establish an alliance. Tiandao sect took the initiative and dispatched 4 nascent soul cultivators, 2 in the late stage and 1 in the middle stage. Tiandao sect's strength ranked first among all the cultivation groups. Everyone was well aware of Tiandao sect's intentions. Seeing that Xianqing school was becoming more and more prosperous, they did this for the chief position of the alliance. Xianqing school had always been more conservative than them. If they took the initiative to attack, they could still gain the upper hand. Unfortunately, Lu Dingyuan's plan fell through because of the return of Qin Shi and Mo Tiange. With 8 nascent soul cultivators, even if Xianqing school didn't have many nascent soul cultivators in Kuanzhong City, Tiandao sect's status wasn't something Tiandao sect could shake. Even if Lu Dingyuan obtained the chief position as he wished, it would still be the same. Tiandao sect cut off all means of retreat and gave up the title of the number 1 cultivation group in the Celestial Pole. Moreover, the Devil Path, which had been peaceful for tens of thousands of years, unexpectedly attacked Mount Yuheng at this time. What's the result? Lord Jinghe rarely showed a serious expression. What's the loss of Tiandao sect? What's the situation now? With the Great Mountain protecting formation, Tiandao sect didn't lose much, Miaoyi answered. This group of disciples of the Devil Path had the highest cultivation level in the core formation realm. It should be a probe by the Devil Path. Lord Huayan sighed. This is indeed bad news. With the beast cultivators in front and the Devil Path behind, Kunwa's situation wasn't good. Although Tiandao sect suffered the biggest loss, all the cultivation groups in Kunwa were united. If Tiandao sect declined, they wouldn't benefit either. This wasn't the demonic beast riot more than 100 years ago. At that time, human cultivators had the upper hand, and the cultivation groups could still play tricks among themselves. Now, the enemy was stronger than them, so they really suffered together. Don't worry, Senior Marshal Brother Huayan, Miaoyi said. Demonic Mountain is a natural barrier, and the restrictions in the surrounding mountains are complicated. These Devil Path cultivators can't come too many, so the situation isn't very critical. Seeing the smile on Lord Miaoyi's face as if she wasn't very worried, Qin Shi suddenly thought of something. Senior Marshal Sister Miao Yi just said we have an alliance. Does that mean we're not facing the beast cultivators but the Devil Path? Miao Yi looked at him with surprise and said with a smile, Junior Marshal Brother Shoujing is really quick-witted. You're right. If Yunzhong was only connected to our area, there was indeed no need for them to support us. It would be great if they could help us a little. However, the change in the Devil Path forced them to help us. She said in detail, after the change in Demonic Mountain, we sent people to inquire about the situation. As a result, we found that in the past tens of thousands of years, the forces of the Devil Path have already penetrated deep into the northeastern forest. The northeastern part of the Celestial Pole was a vast forest. This forest was different from the demonic beast forest in the south of Kunwo. There were no large spirit veins here, so there were only some small demonic beasts and no cultivation groups. Because of this, the big cultivation groups in the Celestial Pole didn't take this forest seriously. Even cultivators who hunted for treasures rarely went there. As it turned out, this forgotten place had long fallen into the hands of the Devil Path. During the war between the Righteous Path and the Devil Path cultivators were driven to the north of Demonic Mountain and never entered Kunwo again. The terrain of that mountain range was complicated and the conditions there were bad. The Devil Path cultivators suffered a lot there, but they were no match for the Righteous Path, so they had no choice but to move northeast. Although the northeastern forest didn't have many spirit veins and wasn't rich in natural resources, it was at least much calmer than Demonic Mountain. After the change in the world, Yunzhong and the Celestial Pole weren't far apart. The natural moat and the South Sea became a strait. Devil Path cultivators discovered that there was such a large piece of fertile land in the northeast. How could they hold back? Although they didn't dare to fight against the cultivators in Yunzhong head-on, they couldn't avoid harassing and plundering from time to time. I see. Qin Shi heaved a sigh of relief. If that was the case, the situation in the Celestial Pole wasn't too bad. With the Devil Path cultivators causing trouble in Yunzhong, at least they didn't have to worry about the Celestial Pole taking advantage of the situation and coming to the Celestial Pole. Besides, in order to let the Celestial Pole contain the Devil Path's rear, the cultivators in Yunzhong might take the initiative to express friendliness and help them deal with the beast cultivators. In this way the alliance could be established. After Lord Taoist Miaoi finished speaking, the others sank into their own thoughts. The appearance of Yunzhong and the unusual movement of the devil path. These two things happened at the same time, so the situation in the celestial pole suddenly became very complicated. The beast cultivators, ghost cultivators, devil path, Yunzhong, and the celestial pole, these 5 forces all had their own enemies. Coupled with the geographical distance, it was really hard to say how things would develop. After a long time, Lord Taoist Jinghe heaved a long sigh and said seriously, which was rare for him, "This game of chess is not easy to play." Yes. Lord Taoist Huayan frowned deeply. The beast cultivators in the southern forest are easy to deal with, but we still don't know what's going on in this new continent. The beast cultivators and ghost cultivators don't get along. Is there anything we can use? How powerful is the devil path in the north of Demonic Mountain now? How many high-level devil cultivators are there? What do they think about Kunwu and Yunzhong? And Yunzhong is powerful, so it shouldn't be difficult for them to deal with the devil path cultivators on Demonic Mountain. Will they use thunderous means to eliminate the devil path in one fell swoop? We're stuck in the middle, so we're not only friends and enemies, but we also have to maintain a kind of balance to survive. Lord Taoist Huayan's cultivation level wasn't high, but he had rich experience. His thoughts were the key. The celestial pole now had enemies and friends, but it wasn't enough to eliminate the enemies. If the forces in Yunzhong were too strong and the devil path were eliminated in one fell swoop, their situation would also be bad. For a long time, cultivators in Kunwu thought they could stay vigilant because they had demonic beasts on their side. After the world changed, the situation changed greatly. Only then did they realize that the original days were actually very peaceful. What was the big deal about killing demonic beasts? They had an absolute advantage and had never faced a crisis of survival. Now they were in a difficult situation. As a group of top cultivators in the celestial pole, the nascent soul Lord Taoists present couldn't escape because they were backed by their sections. Hey! Lord Taoist Jinghe suddenly laughed and said, "I'm actually a little envious of old man Songfeng now. He's good. Even if we fight fiercely, he can stay in his turtle cave and continue to cultivate." Lord Taoist Huayan smiled bitterly. "Senior Martial Brother Jinghe, are you deliberately making things difficult for us? Is this considered making things difficult?" Lord Taoist Jinghe said, "The trouble hasn't come yet. When the beast cultivators launch a large-scale attack and the devil path is unwilling to be left out, it'll be impossible for us to sit here and worry." Hearing this, everyone sighed in their hearts. Wasn't that right? Only the beast cultivators could stay in their sects to cultivate, but if the war broke out, perhaps only 2 or 3 people could stay in their sects to keep watch, or even not. Chapter 530. Emo Tienga was completely unaware of the chaos outside. At this moment she was wholeheartedly cultivating the great heavenly thunder technique. As for the heaven and earth fan, it had already been taken back to her dantian for nourishment. The advancement of a natal magic weapon was never something that could be accomplished overnight, and it couldn't be rushed. In the virtual sky world, her nascent soul was sitting cross-legged on top of her head. It made a hand seal and spat out a ball of golden lightning. This ball of golden lightning was only the size of a fist, but it was full of power. Letting the golden lightning float in the air, Emo Tienga continued to circulate the spiritual aura in her body unhurriedly. When the spiritual aura in her body reached a balanced and stable state, she made a hand seal and released the aura of the origin to wrap the golden lightning. Although the golden lightning's momentum was astonishing, it was very docile to her. It didn't resist at all and let the spiritual aura slowly seep into it. As time passed, the golden lightning absorbed spiritual aura bit by bit and gradually grew stronger. Emo Tienga seemed to have forgotten the passage of time. Cultivation knew no time. Spring, summer, autumn, and winter passed in the blink of an eye. Chin she sat in the cultivation room, cultivating with his eyes closed. As he operated his cultivation technique, the vermilion bird's breath was released from the yang spiritual bead and slowly surrounded him, forming a light red mist around him. His current situation was a bit complicated. Whether it was the yang spiritual bead or the vermilion bird bow, they had already recognized him as their master and wouldn't harm him. However, these two things were too powerful and he couldn't completely control them now. The yang spiritual bead contained too much spiritual aura, so he could only slowly absorb it and refine it for his own use. From this point of view, his cultivation conditions were unique. Even without the virtual sky world or spirit veins, he could still use the yang spiritual bead to cultivate. As for the vermilion bird's breath, it was too powerful. He could only barely use it by relying on the yang spiritual bead. If he wanted to use it smoothly, he had no other way but to improve his cultivation level. Whether it was the yang spiritual bead or the vermilion bird's breath, they were both extreme yang. In this case, it became difficult for him to cultivate the 3 primordial cycles technique, so he could only choose to cultivate the pure yang technique. If he used the pure yang technique as his main cultivation technique, this wouldn't be a problem. However, when he advanced to the nascent soul realm, he once considered switching to cultivating the yin and yang dual cultivation technique Yuan Bao gave him, which became a huge problem. After all these years of exploration, he already had a plan on how to switch to the same cultivation method. However, with his current condition, if the 2 of them changed to cultivating the yin and yang dual cultivation technique, the vermilion bird's breath would inevitably be transmitted to Mo Tiange. This vermilion bird's breath was too domineering. Mo Tiange wasn't the person it recognized as its master, so it was unknown whether she could endure it or not. This problem could only be solved when the 2 of them cultivated together. As he was cultivating, he suddenly sensed something and opened his eyes. After pondering for a moment, he withdrew his spiritual breath, stood up and walked out of the cultivation room. At the same time, the closed-door meditation room next to her opened and Mo Tiange walked out. "How is it, Qin?" she asked impatiently. "Have you mastered the great heavenly thunder spell?" Mo Tiange nodded and stretched out her hand. In an instant, a ball of golden lightning gathered in her palm. "Although it's not a small success, I can finally face the enemy." Qin, she smiled, feeling relieved. The great heavenly thunder art had reached the initial stage, so the journey to the far west could begin. The 2 of them returned to the cultivation room and sat down. After briefly talking about the closed-door meditation, Mo Tiange asked, "How's the situation in the celestial pole these past few years?" "Qin," she answered, "the situation is a bit complicated, but generally speaking it's neither good nor bad. Since the discovery of Yunzhong, the situation changed from confrontation to balance as Lord Taoist Jinghe and Lord Taoist Huayan expected. For this reason, all the cultivation groups in the Celestial Pole quickly formed an alliance in Kuanzhong City, called the Celestial Pole Immortal Alliance. Lu Dingyuan from Tiandao sect was the leader of the alliance and formed a council of elders with 5 late nascent soul cultivators to make decisions together. As long as other cultivators formed their nascent souls, whether they were cultivators from cultivation groups or individual cultivators, they would become elders of the Immortal Alliance. The Immortal Alliance decided that all the cultivation groups in the Celestial Pole, big or small, would be under the control of the Immortal Alliance. All the cultivators in the Celestial Pole, regardless of their cultivation level or origin, would obey the orders of the Immortal Alliance. The establishment of the Immortal Alliance represented the unification of the cultivation world in the Celestial Pole, including Zhengfa sect outside Kunwu and the cultivation clans and small cultivation groups scattered in the mortal countries. Of course, there were so many cultivators in the Celestial Pole and so many cultivation groups, so the management of the Immortal Alliance couldn't be based on the cultivation groups. Therefore, if there was no war, each cultivation group would still be the same as before. The Immortal Alliance had no power over the internal affairs of each cultivation group, but when fighting against foreign enemies, it had the power to command any cultivation group or cultivator. The Immortal Alliance was established at the initiative of the 7 great cultivation groups and was overseen by many nascent soul cultivators. The other cultivation groups and clans didn't dare to oppose it and acknowledged its leadership. After its establishment, the Immortal Alliance sent out a large number of spies to investigate the major forces. The continent connected to the southern forest was called Shiji. It was originally in the far west and was very far away from other continents. There used to be cultivators on this continent, but later, a brilliant ghost cultivator appeared in Shiji. Under the leadership of this ghost cultivator, Shiji established a ghost city, which greatly increased its power. In the end, it even killed all human cultivators. From then on, there were only ghost cultivators on Shiji and no human cultivators. The cultivation method of ghost cultivators was similar to that of human cultivators. They were also divided into aura refining, foundation building, core formation, nascent soul, and so on. The only difference was that they cultivated the aura of death, and in the end they formed a ghost infant. According to legend, after ghost cultivators formed their souls, they could rebuild their corporeal bodies. If they finally became ghost immortals, they could also ascend to the world of immortals. However, it was extremely difficult for ghost cultivators to advance. On Shiji, ghost cultivators had never appeared before. In any case, Ghost cultivators originated from human cultivators and didn't get along with monster cultivators. For tens of thousands of years, ghost cultivators and monster cultivators on Shiji lived in harmony most of the time, but fights broke out every once in a while. As for the Devil Path, their movements became more and more serious in the past few years. Devil Path cultivators often appeared on Demonic Mountain and attacked Tiandao sect disciples. Fortunately, their previous guess was right. The Celestial Pole wasn't their focus. With Demonic Mountain there, it would be difficult to invade the Celestial Pole again. It was better to cross the strait in the northeast and plunder the cultivators in Yunzhong. In this regard, the situation was a bit better than what everyone had expected. Across the sea in the northeast of the Celestial Pole was Nanzhou. Confucian and Buddhist cultivators lived in Nanzhou, so it wasn't very powerful. Although the Dao cultivators of Eastern Tang would also come to help, the Devil Path cultivators of Northern Qilin would just stand by and watch. Putting aside the Devil Path cultivators, Yunzhong's Righteous Path was only slightly stronger than the Celestial Pole, so the gap wasn't as big as they thought. In order to fight against the Devil Path cultivators, Yunzhong sent people to contact the cultivators of the Celestial Pole and establish an alliance. Between Yunzhong's Righteous Path and the Celestial Pole Immortal Alliance was the Devil Path, so the so-called alliance couldn't go deep. In general, there were only 2 points. One was to build a transporting formation between Yunzhong and the Celestial Pole to facilitate the exchange of materials. The other was to reach an agreement on the issue of fighting against the Devil Path forces on Demonic Mountain. As for helping each other in the war, it was impossible. Long-distance transporting formations cost a lot, and neither Yunzhong nor the Celestial Pole was willing to bear the cost. As time went by, the war gradually escalated. 3 years ago, when Mo Chenga was in closed-door meditation, there were only occasional conflicts. Now demonic beasts raided Kunwo from time to time. Many small cultivation groups and cultivation clans suffered huge losses and even disappeared. Under these circumstances, the power of the Immortal Alliance soared, and its influence on Kunwo's cultivation groups became greater and greater. If the war continued, every cultivation group would eventually merge into the Immortal Alliance, and it wouldn't just be a war alliance. Mo Chenga smiled. That chief disciple Lu is really a crafty old fox. Qin, she said, isn't that so? Tiandao sect's position as the #1 cultivation group is out of the question. Instead of fighting for this position, it'd be better to properly manage the Immortal Alliance and dilute its influence. As long as they still have 2 late-stage nascent soul cultivators, their influence in the Immortal Alliance won't be weak. But as far as I know, the lifespans of those 2 late-stage nascent soul cultivators are shorter than senior martial brother Xinjiang and Master, right? Yes. Qin, she glanced at her. Are you taking pleasure in their misfortune? You can't say that. Mo Chenga couldn't restrain her smile. In any case, it'll be 500 or 600 years before they die. Who knows, maybe some late-stage nascent soul cultivators will appear in Tiandao sect by then. Although that was what she said, the smile on her face was clearly malicious. Qin, she shook his head and smiled. You. He paused for a moment, then said, I admire Lu Dingyuan a lot. He's devoted himself to Tiandao sect. He's already a late-stage nascent soul cultivator, so it's not impossible for him to advance to the deification realm in 500 years. However, he's now putting aside his cultivation and running around for the Immortal Alliance. Isn't this just to fight for Tiandao sect's position? Mo Chenga stopped smiling, nodded, and sighed. Yes. There's also Master Daoist Yuan Mu from Juyin sect. Sometimes I really don't understand. Since they've cultivated to the late stage of the nascent soul realm, they naturally have firm Dao hearts, so why are they willing to sacrifice so much for the sect? Xianqing School treated her very well. If there was a need, she would also step forward bravely. However, she couldn't do the kind of painstaking work that Lu Dingyuan and Master Daoist Yuan Mu did. You joined the sect halfway, so you naturally don't understand the significance of the sect for us elite disciples who joined the sect since we were young. Qin, she said slowly, people like us entered the sect when we were young and directly became elite disciples. We were supported by thousands of disciples in the sect, so our feelings for the sect are deeper than our family clans. Without the sect, we wouldn't have our glorious identities and profound cultivation levels. At this point he sighed and said, in the end, cultivators are still human. How can we avoid human feelings? If we don't even care about the feelings of the sect, how can we cultivate to the nascent soul realm? We would have long been plagued by inner demons and died. For a long time, Qin always gave people the feeling that his heart was only focused on cultivation. Mo Chenga never expected he would say something like this. She was stunned for a while, then asked, "So, if there's a need one day you'll do the same thing as them?" She smiled and shook his head. "Everyone has different personalities. Even if we have deep feelings for each other, we'll do different things. This kind of thing doesn't suit me." "Then what will you do?" She thought for a while, then said, "If such a day really comes, I'll find someone to handle it on my behalf and I'll oversee the rear. As long as there's a cultivation level, it doesn't matter who it is. I'm not good at socializing, so it's better to leave it to someone who's good at it." Then he looked at Mo Chenga. "Are you worried that I'll be like them?" Mo Chenga secretly sighed in relief and said, "I just find it hard to imagine." After coming out of closed-door meditation, the two of them went to visit Lord Taoist Jinghe and proposed a trip to the far west. After the Immortal Alliance was established, Lord Taoist Jinyang stayed in Kuanzhong City and didn't stay in the sect. As the war escalated, Hua Yen and Lingxi left one after another to represent Shenqing School in the war. Miaoi temporarily stayed in the sect to handle the sect's affairs. Shenin came back for a while but soon left the mountain again. Now that Qin Shi and Mo Chenga left, only Lord Taoist Jinghe and Lord Taoist Miaoi were left in Shenqing School. Nevertheless, the two of them still let them go. No matter how urgent the war was, it wasn't that they had to go, and the matter of Wanderer Ziwei couldn't be delayed any longer. Chapter 531. The yellow sand was endless, the scorching sun hung high in the sky, and the wind from the west whistled past. It was so dry that there was no water vapor at all, and the heat was unbearable. Standing in the yellow sand and looking up, there was only a dazzling golden color. Apart from that, there were no other colors. This was the westernmost desert, the place with the worst climate in the celestial pole. In the northernmost glaciers, there were at least igloos to keep warm and clean water to drink. But in the westernmost area, there was nothing but yellow sand and scorching sun. Mo Chenga waved her sleeves, creating a gust of wind, but she didn't feel cool at all. She couldn't help but wonder, is there anyone living in this damned place? Cultivators like them were immune to cold and heat, but standing in the yellow sand and looking at this scene, even their hearts would feel hot, let alone mortals. She was looking at an animal skin map. After a while, he put the map into his Qingkuan ring and said, "Of course not in the desert, but if we can find an oasis, we can find people." The steward's hall said oases move, so I'm afraid this map is inaccurate. There was an ancient map in the jade slip given by the steward's hall. It was the map of the desert Senior Xiao Xilan took when she came to the westernmost area. 5,000 years had passed, so this map was no longer accurate. Before the two of them entered the desert, they got the current map from the nearby branch of Shenqing School. However, the desolate land in the westernmost area didn't have many resources, and the branch of Shenqing School didn't know much about the desert, so this map was from several years ago. "There's nothing we can do. Let's look for it." Qin Shi also knew this, but the westernmost desert was very strange to cultivators in the celestial pole, so they didn't have any detailed information about it. "Let's go." The two of them flew with the wind, turned into a flight light and flew deep into the desert. Although the westernmost desert was very vast, it only took 1 or 2 days for nascent soul cultivators to go around. However, there were mirages in the desert, so the two of them were deceived several times. They were obviously very close to each other, but after flying for a long time, they realized it was just an illusion. The marks on the map were very simple, and the two of them couldn't find any oases at all. On the second day, as they were flying in the air, they suddenly saw a caravan of camels moving slowly like ants in the desert. The two of them were overjoyed and flew towards the caravan. There were more than 100 camels in this caravan and 30 to 50 people. All of them were wearing loose white robes and white hats. They were all tall and big, and even the women were very sturdy. Their skin was slightly dark, and their facial features were rather deep. Upon seeing Mo Chenga and Qin Shi descending from the sky, the camel caravan instantly became restless. These white-robed people shouted in a language the two of them didn't understand, and one after another knelt on the ground to worship them. Mo Chenga and Qin Shi glanced at each other. Qin Shi said, "Who's your leader?" No one answered. He asked again, and a white-robed man answered, this lowly one is the leader." The white-robed man's voice was very strange, and it sounded vague. The jade slip given to them by the steward's hall mentioned that the people in the far west were called Shirong. The Shirong people had their own language, but they also traded with people from Qin and Chu. Therefore, only a small number of people knew the common language of the celestial pole. This leader should be one of them. Seeing these white-robed people panicking, Qin showed a kind smile and said gently, "You don't have to be afraid. We just want to ask you something. We won't hurt you." Upon hearing this, the leader stammered, "I don't know, what do we need from God of Heaven? We will definitely do our best. You can stand up first." A group of people kneeling on the scalding sand made Mo Chenga frown slightly. The leader looked at her, then looked at Qin Shi. Seeing that Qin Shi didn't object, he repeatedly kowtowed and thanked him. "Thank you, God of Heaven. Thank you, God of Heaven." As he spoke, he stood up, turned around, waved his arms, and shouted loudly to the people of his tribe in the Shirong language. When everyone stood up, the leader bowed and said, "Thank you, God of Heaven, for your kindness." Shirong people, thank you, God of Heaven, for your kindness. Qin Shi said, "Let me ask you, is there an oasis nearby, and where do you live?" "An oasis?" The leader showed a happy expression and said haltingly, "Two gods of heaven want to go to an oasis? We're the same. The oasis isn't far from here. We'll arrive in about half a day. We live in Imu. After we pass the oasis, we'll arrive in 2 days." "Half a day? That's really not far." Qin Shi looked at Mo Tienga. Seeing that she didn't object, he said, "Since that's the case, show us the way. We'll take you to the oasis." "Yes, yes." The leader bowed again and again. Qin Shi smiled and summoned his flying cloud. The flying cloud expanded to about 30 to 40 feet long. When these white-robed people saw the strange scene in front of them, they wanted to kowtow again and call him God of Heaven. Qin Shi didn't pay them any attention. He waved his sleeve and moved the whole caravan to the flying cloud. He glanced at Mo Tienga. The two of them took the Shirong people and flew up. With the leader leading the way, it only took them half an hour to reach the oasis. This oasis wasn't big. There was a spring in the middle and many tents were set up around the spring. Seeing a group of people descending from the sky, people rushed out of the oasis, kowtowed and shouted in the Shirong language. Upon witnessing this scene, the leader standing behind Mo Chenga and Qin Shi revealed a complacent expression and loudly said something to those people. A skinny old man walked out of the crowd. He was also wearing a white robe and a white hat. He respectfully bowed to the two people and said, "Shili kowtows to greet the two God of Heaven. I wonder if the two God of Heaven have come with instructions?" This old man spoke much more fluently than the leader. Qin Shi said, "We're just passing by. You don't have to be so polite. Yes, it's an honor for the two God of Heaven to visit the oasis. Please accept the oasis hospitality." The old man made an inviting gesture. Qin Shi looked at Mo Tienga. Mo Tienga nodded slightly. They didn't know much about Far West, so they needed to get accurate information from these Shirong people. Under the old man's invitation, the two of them entered a tent. The tent was very spacious. Although it was simple, it had all kinds of daily necessities. The old man asked the two of them to sit down. Immediately, a white-robed girl served them tea. Mo Tienga looked down. The tea was green. It wasn't the tea they usually drank. It seemed to be some kind of juice. The old man said, "This is Shirong's immortal tea. Please drink it, God of Heaven." Mo Tienga hesitated for a moment. Seeing that Qin Shi didn't resist and picked up the teacup and took a sip, she also picked up the cup. This strange tea was very sweet, with the fragrance of plants. It was very refreshing. After watching the two of them drink it, the old man said, "Every rainy season, many immortal trees will grow in the desert. The juice of these immortal trees is immortal tea. In Shirong, immortal tea is only used to entertain distinguished guests." "I see." Mo Chenga paused for a moment, then asked, "What do you mean by calling us God of Heaven?" The old man looked surprised. "You two descended from the sky. Are you not God of Heaven?" Who knew if Shirong people's God of Heaven was referring to cultivators who could fly? Mo Chenga didn't answer. Instead, she asked, "Does your oasis have priests?" According to the jade slip given by the steward's hall, every tribe in Shirong had priests. Most of these priests were low-level cultivators. There were also some low-level cultivators who couldn't survive in the Central Plains and went to Shirong to be priests to enjoy Shirong people's offerings. When he heard the word priest, the old man was no longer suspicious. He hurriedly said, "Yes, the priest went out. God of Heaven, please wait for a moment." Next, the two of them waited for the priest of the oasis to come back while asking the old man for information. This old man named Shili was the oldest elder in the oasis. He used to be the leader of a tribe in Shirong. More than 10 years ago, his tribe encountered a desert storm. Many people died, so the remaining people moved to this oasis. The oasis wasn't a tribe, so it didn't have a leader. According to the rules of Shirong people, everyone had to listen to the elders. This oasis wasn't big. It had existed here for 30 or 40 years. There was a priest and a population of about 100. The population of the entire Shirong tribe wasn't big. Small tribes had dozens of people, and large tribes had hundreds of people. Very few tribes had more than 1,000 people. Some of these tribes were scattered in the oasis of the far west desert, but most of them lived on the edge of the desert. For example, the tribe they met lived in Imu, which wasn't far from here and had just left the desert. Soon the priest of the oasis returned. This person was indeed an aura-refining realm cultivator. As soon as he saw them, he was shocked and hastily kowtowed. Junior Tang Zimu greets seniors. This person seemed to be in his 40s. His face was slightly dark and he was as thin as Shili. Based on his name and his fluent language, he should be from the Central Plains or Kunwu. It was unclear whether he'd lived in the far west for a long time, but even his face looked like a Shirong person. "Are you from Kunwu or the Central Plains?" Jinshi asked. This Tang Zimu, upon seeing the heavy aura coming from the two of them, knew he'd met an expert senior. He answered while trembling with fear, "Junior is from the Central Plains." "Since you're from the Central Plains, why did you come to the far west? How long have you been in this oasis? How much do you know about the far west?" Tang Zimu bowed and answered, "To tell you the truth, Junior was just an ordinary individual cultivator in the Central Plains. Because of my poor aptitude, not to mention the cultivation groups in Kunwu, even the clans in the Central Plains didn't want to take me in. Junior deeply felt that cultivation was difficult, so I came to the far west and became a priest of the Shirong people. Although the conditions in the far west were difficult, the Shirong people respected the priests very much, so their lives were a bit better than those in the Central Plains. Junior has been in the far west for more than 30 years. I don't dare to say I know the far west very well, but I know some things." He paused for a moment. Seeing that the two of them were friendly, he gathered his courage and asked, "Seniors, are you core formation seniors from Kunwu?" For him, core formation cultivators were already heavenly figures. When he was in the Central Plains, it was hard to even see foundation building cultivators, but these two people's auras were even stronger than those foundation building cultivators. Jinshi smiled. He didn't confirm or deny it and said, "We came to the far west to do something, but we don't know much about the far west. You just need to tell us what you know. If you answer well, we'll naturally thank you." "Yes, whatever senior wants to know, Junior will definitely tell you." Seeing that they didn't deny it, Tang Zimu already believed they were core formation seniors, so he hastily answered, "Tell me about the several famous dangerous places in the far west first. Since you've lived here for more than 30 years, you must be very familiar with them." "Yes." Tang Zimu didn't hesitate. "If we're talking about dangerous places in the far west, there are 3 most famous places. The first is Fengsha City, the second is Langtu Mountain, and the third is Fallen God Abyss." Chapter 532. Among the 3 most dangerous places in the far west, Fengsha City was located in the westernmost part of the desert. Langtu Mountain was located in the southwest and was shrouded in ghostly fog all year round. Fallen God Abyss was located in the north and was bottomless. Any one of these 3 dangerous places was a place that individual cultivators in the far west avoided like the plague. Even high-level cultivators in Kunwu were unwilling to go there. If each of these 3 dangerous places had treasures, then no matter how dangerous they were, cultivators would still go there. Unfortunately, there had never been any news about fated chances in these 3 dangerous places, so they became places that were forgotten by cultivators in the Celestial Pole. After listening to Tang Zimu, Jinshi thought for a moment, then took out a map and placed it in front of him. "Take a look. Does the oasis marked on this map still exist? Even if it's a relic?" What he took out was the ancient map the Steward's Hall found in Xuanji School's encampment. The Steward's Hall inquired everywhere and found that Xiao Xilan's last resting place was an oasis not far into the far west marked on the map. After that, they couldn't find any more information. Tang Zimu looked at it carefully, then shook his head. "Senior, Junior has never heard of this oasis. I'm afraid this map is from several hundred years ago, right?" This answer wasn't surprising. In the desert, everything changed in an instant. Not to mention several thousand years, even a few years could greatly change a map. Even the map they got before entering the desert had a lot of errors, let alone this ancient map. Jinshi didn't ask any more. He took out a jade bottle and threw it to him. "Thank you." Tang Zimu took the jade bottle, weighed it in his hand and beamed with joy. "Thank you, senior." Although they were respected by the Shirong people in the far west, cultivation resources were too scarce, and they couldn't find spiritual plants to concoct medicinal pills. Priests in the far west like them could only rely on a few spiritual objects to cultivate. He hadn't seen medicinal pills for many years. Besides, this jade bottle wasn't light, there were at least a dozen of them. Tang Zimu asked enthusiastically, "Seniors, do you have any other orders? If there's anything I can help with, I'll definitely tell you everything I know." "All right." Mo Chenga asked, "Why do the Shirong people call us deities when they see us? What does it mean in the far west?" Tang Zimu replied, "This is the belief of the Shirong people. Legend has it that they were able to establish themselves in the extreme west because the gods gave them an oasis. Later on, when they saw cultivators who could fly, they all called them gods." "I see." Tang Zimu was very perceptive. Seeing that they had stopped talking, he said, "If the two seniors have nothing else to do, please rest here for a while. I promise that no one will disturb you." Mo Chenga smiled and nodded. "Then I'll have to trouble you." I wouldn't dare. Junior will take his leave." Once Tang Zimu left, Qin Shi knocked on the table and said, "There's no news of treasures in the three great perilous zones. Why did Senior Shao come to the far west?" "The far west desert was so big, wanting to find a person who came here 5,000 years ago was too difficult. Unless they could deduce her intention, otherwise, it would be no different than looking for a needle in a haystack." Mo Chenga stared at the ancient map on the table. The markings on it were also very simple. There wasn't even a mention of the three great danger zones. The oasis that Shao Xilan had been to had long disappeared in the desert. Even if they went there, they would not be able to find any clues. Just by looking at this map, they really couldn't see where Shao Xilan went. After thinking for a while, Mo Chenga said, "For a nascent soul cultivator to come to the far west, she must have 3 reasons." Qin Shi looked up at her. She said, "First, the far west's environment is special, so she cultivates some kind of special cultivation technique." Qin Shi thought for a while then nodded. "Correct. If she cultivates an extreme yang cultivation technique, she'll indeed get twice the result with half the effort here. For example, if he had a spirit vein of similar quality, the far west desert would be a very good place to cultivate. However, the Jade Slip Wanderer Ziwei said that Senior Shao cultivates a wood attribute cultivation technique, so this reason shouldn't be valid." Mo Chenga continued, "Second, she deliberately hid here to hide from her enemies or something else." Qin Shi shook his head. "Xuanji School doesn't seem to have any strong enemies, and Wanderer Ziwei also said that Senior Shao is a kind person, very popular, and never makes enemies of others. Then there's only the third reason, to look for treasures. Under normal circumstances, nascent soul cultivators died before their lifespans were up, and this was the most common reason. After cultivating to the nascent soul realm, cultivators all cherished their lives very much. Unless there was a life or death enmity between them, they usually wouldn't risk their lives. However, when faced with fated chances and treasures, sometimes they couldn't care less about risks. Then the question comes back to it. In the far west, what's worth a nascent soul cultivator taking risks and even risking his life for?" This question made the two of them sink into contemplation. After a long time, Mo Chenga said, "I think we still have to go to the 3 great danger zones to explore. Let's not talk about whether there are treasures in the 3 great danger zones, but since they can make a nascent soul cultivator die, they must be dangerous places. In the far west, aside from the 3 great danger zones, what other places are so dangerous?" Qin Shi agreed. Since they couldn't speculate from the reason, they could only speculate from the result. "Let's rest here first. We'll leave tomorrow." The next day, the two of them summoned Tang Zimu and learned some specific information about the 3 great danger zones from him. Tang Zimu was only a low-level cultivator, so he didn't know much about the 3 great danger zones. He only told them the general path and recommended them to go to the Shirong tribe near the danger zones to find a guide. These Shirong people had always lived near the danger zones, so they more or less knew a bit about them. The two of them gave Tang Zimu some spirit stones and medicinal pills as compensation and left the oasis. The first danger zone they went to was the Fallen God Abyss. The Fallen God Abyss was located in the northern part of the desert in the far west. It was a fissure thousands of miles long, with gales whistling inside and a bottomless abyss. The Shirong people said that even heavenly gods would fall into the Fallen God Abyss, so it was called the Fallen God Abyss. The name seemed to be related to cultivators, so the two of them had high hopes for the Fallen God Abyss. They found a tribe near the Fallen God Abyss and learned about the legend of the Fallen God Abyss from an old man. It was said that a long time ago, there was no fallen god abyss in the far west. Later, two heavenly gods fought there, and one of them slashed down with his sword, creating a long fissure that became the fallen god abyss. The fallen god abyss was bottomless. If one accidentally fell in, even a heavenly god couldn't save them. The tribes living nearby would order their people not to go near the fallen god abyss. The old man in the tribe was shocked when he heard they were going to the fallen god abyss. He repeatedly advised them that even if a heavenly god went to the fallen god abyss, he wouldn't be able to return. Chinga was very interested in what he said, so she asked him if any god of heaven came here. The old man answered that he had never seen one, but according to the legend of the tribe, a heavenly god entered the fallen god abyss a long time ago and never came back. Hearing this news, the two of them became even more interested in the fallen god abyss. After thanking the old man, they went straight to the fallen god abyss. Although she had heard about the appearance of the fallen god abyss from Tang Zimu and the old man, Chinga still gasped when she saw the long fissure. It's so big. This fissure was not only thousands of miles long, but it was also several miles wide. Standing on the edge of the fissure and looking down, it was so dark that they couldn't see the end. Even the gales inside the fissure were gray in color. The fissure was surrounded by dry Yellowstone, not even a blade of grass grew. From time to time, Yellowstone would roll down and be swept away by the gales. Standing on the edge of the fallen god abyss, the two of them heard the howling gales with powerful momentum. They thought, no wonder this fissure is called the fallen god abyss. Not to mention mortals, even ordinary cultivators can't withstand such gales. Should we go down? Chinga asked. She used her divine sense to feel the power of the gales. Even core formation cultivators would find it difficult to deal with them. Who knew if the deeper they went, the more powerful it would be? Let's go down, she said. We'll talk about it if we can't bear it. In the absence of clues, if they wanted to find Xiao's island, they could only go through the three great danger zones one by one. She shook his arm. The three-young real fire sword emerged from his body and turned into sword aura, surrounding the two of them. Chinga also summoned the heaven and earth fan and the white silk handkerchief. During the heavenly tribulation, half of the white silk handkerchief was broken. In the past few years, she found some materials and managed to repair it so it could still be used. Soon after, the two of them jumped into the fallen god abyss. The wind howled in their ears and the aura around them was chaotic. Chinga frowned, touched her Qingquan ring and took out the Tai Chi 8 diagrams. The Tai Chi 8 diagrams unfolded beside her, and the aura around them immediately stabilized. The two of them continued to descend, and the gales swept towards them. With the howling sound of the wind, the gales carried a lot of Yellowstone fragments and smashed towards them. Before these fragments could get close to them, they were burned by the vermilion bird's flames carried by the three-young real fire sword, and the sizzling sound was endless. The two of them continued to descend in the gales. This wind. Chinga frowned and said, it seems to be able to disturb our divine senses. She spread her divine sense, but she couldn't reach the bottom of the fallen god abyss. And let's be careful, she said. The gales became stronger and stronger, and the whistling sound in their ears almost broke their eardrums. In the end, Chinga was sure that even core formation cultivators couldn't stand this level of gales. No wonder there weren't many cultivators who came to the far west. Just descending from the top of the fallen god abyss was already so dangerous, and she didn't hear about any treasures. Which nascent soul cultivator would be so free? Speaking of which, could it be that Senior Xiao's island was bored, so she searched for treasures everywhere and thought there should be treasures in such a dangerous place, so she came to the far west? This guess wasn't impossible. The problem was, according to Wanderer Ziwei, Xiao's island didn't seem to be such a bored person. After descending for a quarter of an hour, the two of them felt a strong suction. Chinga looked down and saw a vortex appearing in the gales below. Her expression changed slightly, but she already shouted, "Dodge!" The appearance of a vortex meant that there was a powerful force in that place. The gales around them were already at the nascent soul realm, so who knew whether they could withstand the force in the vortex? The two of them changed directions, wanting to stay away from the vortex, but they couldn't stop falling. The deeper they fell, the stronger the force of the vortex became. They tried their best to avoid it, but they were still inevitably dragged by the vortex bit by bit. They could only hold hands tightly to protect each other. Chapter 533. A tearing force came, almost tearing their protective aura shield apart. The two of them tried their best to maintain their balance and block this force, but their bodies fell down uncontrollably like kites with broken strings. The feeling of losing control lasted for about a quarter of an hour. Finally, with a bang, the sword aura of the three young real fire sword seemed to have smashed something, and the two of them fell down heavily. The whining sound of the wind suddenly subsided. After a while, the two of them got used to it and crawled up in a daze. "Are you okay?" Qingxi asked. Emo Chenga took a deep breath and shook her head. "I'm fine." Her meridians and body were incomparable to ordinary cultivators. She just felt a little dizzy after losing control for so long. "How about you?" Qingxi shook his arm and withdrew the three young real fire sword. "I'm fine." He had also been tempered by the vermilion bird, so a small impact was nothing to him. After making sure they were fine, the two of them looked around and found that the place they fell into was a pit surrounded by yellow stones. Not even a blade of grass grew there. There was no gales and only a slight sound of the wind. The two of them came out of the pit. The place they were in seemed to be a canyon surrounded by yellow stones. There were no living creatures. The whining sound of the wind came from a distance, but they couldn't hear it clearly. Above the canyon, the light was dim and the breath was chaotic. There was only a very narrow crack. Following the sound of the wind, the two of them found the center of the vortex. At the entrance of the canyon, the gales gathered into a vortex. This vortex wasn't big, but it was very powerful. As soon as they approached, the spiritual aura fluctuations brought by the vortex cut their bodies like sharp blades. Qingxi frowned slightly. He shook his sleeves and a sword aura flew out, piercing the vortex. The closer they got to the vortex, the harder it was to control the sword aura. As soon as it touched the center of the vortex, it suddenly lost control and was thrown out by the vortex. With a bang, it hit the yellow stones on the side and shattered them. Seeing this, the two of them looked at each other and their expressions changed slightly. This sword aura was separated from the three young real fire sword by Qingxi. It contained the breath of the vermilion bird and was connected to his mind, but he lost control so easily. No wonder they were easily sucked in. Even nascent soul cultivators couldn't directly resist the power of this vortex. "What should we do?" Emo Chenga asked after hesitating for a while. Qingxi looked around and said, "Let's walk around first and see what kind of place this is." Emo Chenga nodded. This was the only way. The two of them walked along the canyon all the way to the depths. Although there were no spirit veins or strange creatures here, due to the existence of the vortex, they did not dare to casually use Dharma spells. They only surrounded themselves with protective spiritual energy and slowly moved forward. The path up the canyon was very complicated. The two of them walked for a long time before they realized that it was not a canyon, but a very deep cave. The cracks on the canyon had disappeared. As they got further and further away from the vortex, the sound of the wind gradually faded away. The world around them was quiet except for the sound of their footsteps. The surrounding stone walls gradually turned into a greenish-gray color. After walking for another half a day, she still couldn't see the end of the road, and the scenery didn't change in the slightest. Emo Chenga was baffled. What the hell is this place? Why does it seem like we're still in the same place? Qingxi looked at the scenery around him and said, "This cave is indeed too long." As he spoke, he waved his sleeve and shot out a spiritual aura, preparing to carve a mark on the stone wall of the cave. A red light flashed and touched the greenish-gray stone wall, but there was no sound as expected. There was only a slight chi sound. Soon after, the red light disappeared and there was nothing on the stone wall. Qingxi's expression changed greatly and he stood still. Emo Chenga was also stunned. After a long time, she finally found her voice. How could this be? After a while, Qingxi finally regained his composure. He didn't answer. Instead, he took out the main body of the three young real fire sword and stabbed it at the stone wall. The tip of the sword didn't encounter any obstruction and easily touched the stone wall, but it stopped at the bottom. The sword couldn't pierce the stone wall in the slightest, and the vermilion bird's flame on the sword also disappeared completely when it touched the stone wall. This stone wall could even swallow the vermilion bird's flame. The two of them glanced at each other and saw fear in each other's eyes. For nascent soul cultivators like them, the most frightening thing wasn't a powerful opponent, but having a divine ability but being unable to use it. Emo Chenga stretched out her hand and gathered a ball of golden lightning in her palm. She waved it lightly and threw it at the stone wall. There was still a slight chi sound. The golden lightning touched the stone wall and disappeared without a trace. The vermilion bird's flame and heavenly tribulation lightning. These two could be said to be the most powerful spells in the world, but they unexpectedly didn't have any effect on this ordinary stone wall. What the hell is this? Qingxi muttered to himself. Although he wasn't very old, he had been traveling everywhere since he built his foundation, so his knowledge was very extensive. However, not only had he never seen this thing but he had also never heard of it. Mo Chinga's expression was solemn. She made a hand seal and cast a series of spells. Saber light, sword shadow, dancing leaves and flying flowers, rain and sorrow, vermilion bird burning the sky, earth sinking quicksand. She cast high-level spells of the 5 elements, as well as other spells of wind, thunder and ice. All the spells disappeared without a trace when they touched the stone wall. Mo Chinga stopped and stared blankly at the stone wall without saying anything. She had the spiritual roots of the origin so she could use spells of the 5 elements including other spells. However, no matter which element she used, they couldn't cause any damage to the stone wall and were all absorbed. What happened in front of her reminded her of the 3-headed ape that appeared in the Carefree Valley in the clouds. None of the spells or weapons could harm the 3-headed ape. However, that was different from the situation in front of them. The 3-headed ape was alive, but the stone wall in front of them was a dead object. After thinking for a while, Mo Chinga opened the spiritual beast pouch and released Feifei. "What's wrong?" "I'm sleeping." Feifei rolled out of the spiritual beast pouch, looking somewhat dissatisfied. Mo Chinga ignored its tone. She pointed at the stone wall and asked, "Feifei, under what circumstances can spells of the 5 elements and other spells be absorbed?" Feifei stretched out its paw and touched its head. She continued to ask, "Do you remember the giant ape in the Carefree Valley? Its cultivation level obviously wasn't high, but it wasn't afraid of our attacks at all. Why is that?" Feifei blinked its eyes and said, "Are you talking about that giant ape called Stone? It grew up in that kind of strange place and its cultivation method is very unique. It was exposed to spiritual aura, devil aura, dead aura, and filthy aura since it was a child and combined them into one, so it produced this kind of effect. If you want to ask why, I can't tell you. There are many strange things in this world." "What about this?" Mo Chinga pointed at it. Spells that hit these stones had no effect at all. They seemed to be completely absorbed and even sharp weapons couldn't pierce them. "Absorbed?" Feifei's tone became serious. It turned to look at the stone wall, reached out its hand, touched it and cast a simple spell. In the end it squatted and didn't move, seeming to be thinking. "What do you think?" Mo Chinga urged. After a while Feifei said, "If this was a living thing, I really wouldn't be able to answer. I can only say that the world is full of strange things. However, this is a dead thing so I have an idea." "Quickly say it." She urged it anxiously. Feifei cast a sidelong glance at her and rolled its eyes. It then stretched out its paw and took out a teacup out of nowhere. "Look at this cup. If you hit the side of the cup it would be smashed by you, right?" Mo Chinga nodded. Feifei turned its palm. "But what if you hit it from the mouth of the cup?" She frowned and said, "You're saying, this is a container?" Feifei nodded with satisfaction. "Yes. Since this thing can absorb spells of the 5 elements, it means it can store the power of the 5 elements. The only difference is that when you put things into the cup, you have to put them from the mouth of the cup, but this thing can be put in from anywhere." Upon hearing this, an idea emerged in Mo Chinga's mind. If this stone is refined into a magic weapon, it should be the best defensive method. Feifei said indifferently. "But the problem is, how can you refine it into a magic weapon? Which kind of fire can refine it?" Mo Chinga was stunned but soon said, "Since it can store the power of the 5 elements, there must be a limit, right? As long as it's full and can't absorb any more, can't we refine it?" "You're right, but you just said this thing can't even be pierced by sharp weapons, so how can we take it away?" This was indeed a big problem. Mo Chinga hesitated and looked at Qin Shi thought for a long time then shook his head. "I also don't know." He. Upon seeing their expressions, Feifei smiled slyly. "I have a way." Mo Chinga glared at it. "If you have a way, why don't you say it quickly? Whose spiritual beast is this? It's so unconscious." Feifei continued to smile slyly and scratched the ground with its paw. "What's in it for me to tell you?" After staring at it for a while, Mo Chinga said, "Just say it. What do you want?" This guy must have thought of a condition. Feifei immediately jumped up. "I want blood-eating vines. A lot of blood-eating vines." Blood-eating vines were spiritual creatures they obtained in the Sea of Returning Ruins. This kind of spiritual creature fed on demonic beast flesh and was also a great tonic for demonic beasts. At that time, they chopped a lot of them and later divided them among the 4 spiritual beasts. Xiaofan advanced, and the other 3 spiritual beasts' cultivation levels also soared and were about to advance. Upon hearing this request, Mo Chenga breathed a sigh of relief and said, "It's not a big deal. If I don't give it to you, do you think I'll eat it myself? Tell me quickly and I'll give you as many as you want." "Remember what you said," Feifei emphasized and then said, "You can use spirit tempering water. Spirit tempering water can wash away all the impurities in the world. If you remove the impurities, the stone will disappear." Mo Chenga was stunned and suddenly understood. Why didn't she think of this? The most difficult part of tool refining was to separate the impurities from the materials, and the impurities were often mixed with the materials. If the impurities were removed, the materials would generally become small pieces. "Okay, let's try first. If we succeed, I'll give you a pile of blood-eating vines." As she spoke, she opened the spiritual beast bag and picked up Feifei. Feifei twisted and turned while shouting, "I want it now." Mo Chenga tied the spiritual beast bag and its voice disappeared. Chapter 534. It took a lot of time to take out the spirit-quenching water from the virtual sky world. In the end, many small pieces of white jade were separated from the stone wall. These white jades were milky white in color and were made of clear material, but strangely they didn't have any spiritual aura. Mo Chenga turned them over and over, doubting. Is this really it? How could a treasure that could absorb spells of the 5 elements have no spiritual aura at all? She held up a piece of jade and released the vermilion bird's flame from his palm. When he touched the jade, the flame disappeared. He said, "It should be. This is a simple container without spiritual aura, which means it's very pure." Thinking about it this way, Mo Chenga also felt it made sense. If a container was empty, there would naturally be nothing inside. Unfortunately, the spirit-quenching jade hadn't been buried in the virtual sky world for long, so it didn't produce much spirit-quenching water. All of it was used up, but only a small bag of jade was melted. After putting it away, the 2 of them continued to move forward. This cave was very long, but fortunately there were no dangerous things. As they walked, the color of the stones became darker and their surroundings became hotter. After half a day, they finally reached the end of the cave. The red light was dazzling. In front of them was a huge crater. At the bottom of the volcano, lava was rolling and the temperature was extremely high. The 2 of them finally realized that they were in a small cave on the wall of this volcano. Looking down at the volcano, Mo Chenga said, "There seems to be nothing special here." This volcano wasn't on a spirit vein. Although there was earthly fire, its level wasn't very high. At least it wasn't at the level of supreme yang real fire. And with the vermilion bird's flame, she wasn't interested in ordinary fire. He looked up and said, "Let's go up." They flew out of the crater. In front of them was still a barren land. Not even a blade of grass grew and there were no living creatures. As they approached the crater, the rocks were smoked black and then red. Further away they saw dried yellow stones just like above. The 2 of them were a bit surprised. This place was called Fallen God Abyss and was known as one of the 3 most dangerous places in the far west. They thought the bottom of the abyss must be very dangerous, but why was there nothing except the gales and whirlpools in the sky? "Let's go and look around," Mo Chenga said. And since there was no danger, the 2 of them used their respective escape techniques and flew forward. Looking from above, the crack in the Fallen God Abyss was thousands of miles long, but the bottom was not so long. At most, it was only a few hundred miles. With the speed of the 2 of them, they traveled back and forth in less than half a day. After searching the entire bottom of the Fallen God Abyss, he finally confirmed that there was indeed nothing here. There were no dangerous things, no treasures and no traces of people. The only strange thing was the astral wind vortex at the bottom of the kernel. As long as one was within a mile of the vortex, they would be affected. She muttered to himself for a long time before he said, "It seems like it's not here." Yes. Since it's one of the 3 most dangerous places, why is the Fallen God Abyss so calm? She smiled and said, "It's very peaceful down there, but think about it, how are other cultivators supposed to come down? Even core formation cultivators couldn't resist the astral winds in this high altitude. How many nascent soul cultivators would be so bored as to come to this desolate place? Besides, there was still the whirlpool after passing through the astral winds. If we didn't have a chance to temper our bodies and were sucked into the whirlpool, we might not be able to keep our lives." "That's true." Mo Chenga paused and asked, "Then should we go back?" "Let's go back." She stepped on the flying cloud. Emo Chenga followed him and turned to look at the fallen god abyss in front of her. I always feel that this fallen god abyss isn't that simple. She shook his head. Even if it's not simple, there's no need to explore it right now. We have another purpose for this trip. Let's finish our business first. That's true. After some effort, the two of them came out of the fallen god abyss. It only took them 2 days to get out. They collected a small bag of unknown jades and didn't find any clues. After coming out, the two of them discussed and decided to go to Fengsha City next. The distance from the fallen god abyss to Fengsha City was closer than Langtu Mountain. With the map provided by Tang Zimu, the two of them didn't get lost this time. They rested in an oasis and arrived at Fengsha City 3 days later. Fengsha City was located in the west, on the edge of the far west desert and backed by the West Ridge mountain range. Compared to the mysterious fallen god abyss, there were many legends about Fengsha City. Almost all the tribes that lived near Blowing Sand City, big or small, had their own legends about it. In the legends of Shirong, Fengsha City was also called Devil City. It was said that tens of thousands of years ago, this was the most prosperous city in the far west. Later, because they offended the devil, a sandstorm destroyed the city overnight. The people living nearby could often hear the devil's roar coming from Fengsha City. The authenticity of this legend didn't need to be considered, but Fengsha City was indeed strange. Tang Zimu said the city's terrain was strange. Almost none of the cultivators who entered the city came out. Even those who were lucky enough to escape were seriously injured and didn't have long to live. Among them, there were also high-level cultivators from Kunwu, but Tang Zimu couldn't tell how high their cultivation levels were. After all, he was just an ordinary high priest in the far west, a low-level cultivator who couldn't even survive in the Central Plains. Unexpectedly, when the two of them arrived at the small town next to Fengsha City, they actually found other nascent soul cultivators. Hey, aren't these fellow Taoists Shoujing and Qingwei from Shenqing School? Emo Chenga turned around and saw two cultivators sitting in a tea stall in the small town. Both were in the early stage of the nascent soul realm. One of them was dressed in yellow and the other in green. The yellow-robed man looked younger, about 28 or 29 years old. He had many spirit beast pouches hanging on his waist. He was a cultivator from Lingshou sect. The green-robed man looked older and had a leaf embroidered on his cuff. Emo Chenga didn't know which sect he belonged to. Your fellow Taoist Hua? Qin she asked with uncertainty. Cultivators from Lingshou sect always kept a low profile, so he didn't see many of them. The man smiled. I'm Huaziki. I didn't expect fellow Taoist Shoujing to remember me. Huaziki took 2 steps forward, laid a soundproof barrier and asked in a low voice, Fellow Taoists, are you also here for the treasure? Treasure? Emo Chenga looked at Qin Shi with doubt. Qin Shi paused and asked, where did fellow Taoist Hua get this information? Huaziki said in surprise, where else but the Immortal Alliance? Now that all the big cultivation groups are under the jurisdiction of the Immortal Alliance and the war is imminent, the Immortal Alliance sent me and fellow Taoist Zong to investigate the situation. He seemed to remember something and stared at them vigilantly. Fellow Taoist Zong and I just left Kuanzhong City for half a month. The Immortal Alliance didn't send you here again, right? Seeing his expression, Qin Shi knew he misunderstood, so he said with a smile, Fellow Taoist Hua, to be honest, we don't know anything about the treasure. We came here to do something else, but we didn't expect to run into fellow Taoist Hua so coincidentally. Huaziki glanced at them then smiled. Is that so? Is the matter you're doing confidential? If you tell us, maybe we can help each other. Right, I forgot to introduce you too. This is fellow Taoist Zong Sizong from Changxing sect. Changxing sect was a medium-sized cultivation group near Kuanzhong City. It was neither too big nor too small, and its wood element cultivation technique was quite unique. It seemed that it only had one nascent soul cultivator, so it should be fellow Taoist Zong. Zong Sizong cupped his hands to salute the two of them, then said indifferently, Greetings, fellow Taoists. Emo Chenga and Qin Shi returned the salute. Fellow Taoists, let's sit down and talk. Qin Shi looked around then nodded. Emo Chenga spread her divine sense but didn't find anything unusual in this small town. There were only some ordinary Shirong people and a few low-level cultivators, so she let down her guard. The 4 of them sat down in the tea house. Huaziki laid a soundproof barrier again then asked again, May I know why fellow Taoists are here? The far west is so desolate, but we're really fated to meet here. Huaziki had a smile on his face, but the vigilance in his eyes didn't fade. Emo Chenga thought this person was really cautious. No wonder the Immortal Alliance sent him here. Qin Shi smiled and said, the two of us, husband and wife, came to the far west on Master's order to do something. Years ago, my master once had a fated chance and agreed to a senior's request to find the remains of his first wife. Not long ago, Xianqing School Steward's Hall found some clues. Coincidentally, my master had to oversee the sect and couldn't leave, so he asked us to come on his behalf. What he said was half true and half false. They absolutely couldn't tell him that Mo Chenga was placed under a restriction, but if they didn't make it clear, this fellow Taoist Hua might become suspicious of them. They didn't want to complicate matters, so it was best to dispel Huaziki's suspicions. That way things would be easier. Maybe they could really help each other. Oh, so it's about fellow Taoist Jinghe. The doubts in Huaziki's eyes disappeared a little. He said, that's really a coincidence. The far west is desolate. Not to mention nascent soul cultivators, even core formation cultivators aren't willing to come here. Unexpectedly, the two of you also came at this time. That's right. Qin Shi said faintly, we don't have all the clues. We only know that there are 3 great danger zones in the far west. That senior went missing in the far west, so it's most likely related to the 3 great danger zones. We can only find them one by one. We just went to the fallen god abyss a few days ago, but unfortunately we didn't find anything, so we came to Fengsha City. These things originally didn't need to be explained so clearly to other people. He said this deliberately for Huaziki to hear. Sure enough, Huaziki didn't ask any more questions. So, fellow Taoists don't know about the treasures? Zhong Si, who was traveling with Huaziki, said. Qin Shi looked at him and calmly shook his head. I really don't know. Seeing that he didn't look like he was pretending, Zhong Si relaxed a little and glanced at Huaziki. Huaziki paused for a moment, then said with a smile, this matter isn't a secret in Kuanzhong City. Presumably you too can get the news now that you've returned to your sect. Is that so? Qin Shi looked a little curious. He said, if fellow Taoists don't mind, we'd like to hear it. Huaziki smiled and winked mischievously. It's not a problem to hear it, but fellow Taoists have to help after you hear it. Chapter 535. Mo Chenga wasn't familiar with the nascent soul cultivators in the celestial pole. It hadn't been long since she advanced to the nascent soul realm, so she hadn't established any connections. Out of consideration for Xianqing School, the nascent soul cultivators from various cultivation groups treated her politely. However, as nascent soul cultivators, they inevitably had a bit of arrogance and always kept a distance from each other. However, this fellow Taoist Hua from Spirit Beast sect was talkative and humorous. Qin Shi smiled and said, Xianqing School is also a member of the Immortal Alliance, so it's only right for us to help. Huaziki blinked and smiled. That's good, that's good. This matter has something to do with Xianqing School. Huaziki slowly explained the matter. Not long ago your group's brother Xianin Tiandao sect's fellow Taoist Lu, and Biyun sect's fellow Taoist Qinglan went deep into the demonic beast forest. They killed a beast cultivator and obtained something from him. The 3 of them returned to Kuanzhong City and handed it over. After the Doyens studied it, they found it was an ancient item. It seemed to be a map of a large ancient sect storehouse. Storehouse map. Qin Shi was surprised. Mo Chenga was also attracted. They had been to the storehouse of the Ice Palace and knew how grand the storehouses of the so-called big ancient sects were. If they could really find the storehouse of a big ancient sect, it would be great news for the current immortal allies. They would need to consume resources to fight against demonic cultivators and demonic cultivators. Mo Chenga became suspicious. Finding an ancient storehouse was a big deal, so this news should be very secretive. Why did Huaziki say it so easily? What was even more strange was that the Immortal Alliance only sent 2 early-stage nascent soul cultivators to investigate. It seemed they didn't attach much importance to it. Huaziki waved his hand as if he knew her doubts and explained, you don't need to be surprised. This map is incomplete and only vaguely points to the west, so the Immortal Alliance sent me and fellow Taoist Zong to explore the situation. In fact, the map is too incomplete, so the Immortal Alliance didn't have much hope. I see. Qin Shi nodded to show his understanding. In that case this task won't be easy. Of course. Huaziki smiled bitterly. We only have an incomplete map in our hands. We don't even have a detailed clue. According to the markings on the map, the storehouse was probably in the far west, but the far west was so vast, where could they find it? We entered the desert, but we didn't find anything. So we came to Sandstorm City to try our luck. Mo Chenga turned to look at Fengsha City, which wasn't too far away. She asked, Could it be that in the distant past era there was a big spirit vein in the far west? Otherwise, why would this ancient sect build their storehouse here? The sect's treasury was extremely important to the sect. Apart from having more high-grade cultivators and disciples than smaller sects, the main reason why a large sect was because of its vast accumulation of resources. Large sects had tens of thousands of years of accumulation and were rich in resources. If needed, they could raise a large number of outstanding disciples in a short period of time. In times of danger they could erupt with great strength. This was the so-called foundation of large sections. So, the sect's storehouse was built in the sect's base, and it was covered in layers of restrictions and heavily guarded. If one wasn't a core disciple of the sect, it would be difficult to even catch a glimpse of it. Apart from that, many sects would also set up their own storehouses. These storehouses were usually built in the sect's main courtyard. For example, Zhengfa sect was located in the far north, but it also had a sizable branch in Kunwu that also had a storehouse. Places with courtyards were bound to have spirit veins. Waziki shook his head. We're also very unfamiliar with the far west. However, after going around for a while, it doesn't seem like there's a big spirit vein in the far west. Mo Chenga and Qin Shi looked at each other and Qin Shi said, since there's no spirit vein, how could there be a storehouse? Waziki said, to tell you the truth, in the ancient records of the celestial pole, there's never been any record of any large cultivation group in the far west. Several doyens think this storehouse is probably the secret treasure hiding place of a large ancient sect. Oh. The two of them understood. The so-called secret treasure trove was, in fact, a well-hidden warehouse. Many large cultivation groups had this kind of secret storehouse, but no one knew where it was except for the people in charge. The affairs of the world were unpredictable. Even a large cultivation group might face a calamity. Once they encountered such a crisis, the function of the secret storehouse would become obvious. They could use the materials in the secret storehouse to find an opportunity to rise again. Even if they couldn't restore their former glory, they wouldn't destroy their orthodoxy. This kind of secret storehouse was usually very rich, second only to the sect's main storehouse. Moreover, the location didn't matter whether there was a spirit vein or not. The more remote the better. That being the case, the far west was indeed a good place. The conditions were bad and there were few people here. If they didn't use the secret storehouse, no one would know about it. More importantly for them, the secret storehouse of a large ancient sect was more meaningful than the main storehouse. Because the main storehouse was located inside the sect, it was backed by a spirit vein. No matter how long it had been, the power of the restrictions would still exist. It would be very troublesome to break it, and sometimes it would be impossible to break it. As for the secret storehouse, it was usually located in a desolate place. Without a spirit vein, the restrictions and formations would slowly lose their power over a long period of time. If they found it, they could take out all the treasures in the storehouse. So, fellow Taoists are going to Fengsha City? Jingxi asked. Isn't that right? Waziki shook his head and sighed. We analyzed the situation. We can't just bury the treasures in the desert, right? So our target is the edge of the desert. Fengsha City is one of the 3 most dangerous places in the far west. It's a good place to hide treasures. Then he looked at Qin Shi and Mo Tiange. What about fellow Taoists? Do you also want to go to Fengsha City? Qin Shi nodded. Yes, we came for Fengsha City. Apart from the 3 most dangerous places, is there any other place in the far west where nascent soul cultivators can't return? What a coincidence. Waziki smiled. Since we have the same goal, are you willing to go with us? Qin Shi glanced at Mo Tiange and said with a smile, since fellow Taoists who invited us, why not? After reaching an agreement with Huazong and Mo Tiange, the 4 of them arranged a time and went their separate ways. Huazong and Mo Tiange went to the surrounding small tribes to inquire about the situation in Fengsha City. Mo Tiange and Qin Shi temporarily settled in the small town. Senior Marshal Brother, Mo Tiange said worriedly after setting up a soundproof barrier, how trustworthy do you think fellow Taoist Hua's words are? Qin Shi didn't answer but asked, do you think his words aren't trustworthy? Mo Tiange pondered and said, I don't know this fellow Taoist Hua, so I don't know what kind of person he is. However, discovering the treasure hiding place of a great ancient sect is a big deal. How could he casually disclose the mission? He said the Immortal Alliance doesn't have much hope for this, but this reason seems a bit far-fetched. Even if there was no definite information about a secret storehouse, it couldn't be casually publicized. Although the Immortal Alliance was established in the Celestial Pole now, there were still competitors among the cultivation groups. Moreover, among the people who discovered the treasure map, there were people from Shenqing School. Did he not consider that they came here secretly to investigate the location of the treasure? What you said makes sense. She didn't object, but his next sentence was, "But I think he's just a little petty." She said, "Senior Marshal Brother Xinjiang's name in the Council of Elders isn't a secret to Shenqing School. Regardless of whether we came here for this matter or not, it's not strange for him to be frank about this mission. First, it's easy for us to find out, so there's no need for him to hide it. Second, I'm afraid he's deliberately flattering us." Mo Chenga was puzzled. Why would he flatter us? In terms of identity, he's the Grand Supreme Elder of Spirit Beast Sect, one of the 7 great cultivation groups, so he's not inferior to us. In terms of cultivation level, he's only one small realm higher than you, so it's not worth flattering us, right? It's not because of this. She shook his head. In my opinion, not only are his words not trustworthy, but they're also quite exaggerated. Huh? Mo Chenga was even more confused. Then why did you say he's just a little petty? She smiled and said, "How can the Far West be so big? Why did they come to Sandstorm City so coincidentally? It's not easy to bury treasures in the desert, but Westridge Mountain Range is very long. Sandstorm City is a dangerous place, so shouldn't it be the last place to investigate? You're saying they're sure the secret storehouse is in Sandstorm City? Even if they're not sure, they should have some pretty solid clues." She stared at her meaningfully. "Do you understand now?" Mo Chenga thought about it and understood what he meant. "I understand. We just happened to come to Sandstorm City at this time, so this secret storehouse is very likely to be discovered by us. That being the case, why don't we join them? With treasures in front of us, everyone has to be a little petty." "Correct." She showed a faint smile. "He invited us to go with him and didn't conceal his mission at all. He wants to borrow our strength, but he also agreed to share a piece of the pie with us." Mo Chenga shook her head. The thoughts of these nascent soul cultivators were really complicated. On the surface, Huaziki seemed straightforward, humorous and straightforward, but she didn't expect there were so many layers of meaning in his few short sentences. "Then what do you think, Senior Marshal Brother?" "Since I agreed, I'll naturally accept his proposal," she said lightly. "This secret storehouse belongs to the Immortal Alliance even if we find it. If we can take advantage of it, why shouldn't we?" "All right." After a pause, she suddenly laughed. She raised his eyebrows and asked, "What are you laughing at?" Mo Chenga stopped laughing and asked, "Do you remember when we left Yunwu sect, you took me back once?" "Of course I remember." She sighed with emotion. "At that time you were still a little girl. In the blink of an eye, it's been more than 100 years. "Yes." Mo Chenga sighed but soon smiled. "At that time I wasn't familiar with you. I only felt you were cold, steady, and had the air of a gentleman. I didn't expect that before we left, you would ransack Yunwu sect." She also laughed when he heard her mention this. He touched his nose, seeming a little embarrassed. "It'd be a waste not to take some advantage. Yunwu sect did that kind of thing and I've long wanted to teach them a lesson. By the way, you obviously hated them back then, but why haven't you mentioned revenge all these years?" Mo Chenga looked at him meaningfully. "When we left that year, you seriously injured 2 core formation cultivators from Jiang clan. Did you think I didn't know?" She was stunned. "You knew?" "Yes, I met Senior Marshal Brother Lu later." Mo Chenga sighed and said faintly, "Jiang Qingxian was killed by Senior Marshal Brother Jiang, and the 2 core formation cultivators from Jiang clan were seriously injured by you. What kind of hatred do I have? The ones who offended me were people from Jiang clan, and the ones who saved me were also people from Jiang clan. As for second uncle's revenge, by the time I had the ability to go back, those 2 core formation cultivators from Jiang clan were probably already dead. Did I really have to go back and exterminate the whole Jiang clan?" Chapter 536. When she was building her foundation, Mo Chenga met Louis Dao, who lived with her back then. From him, she learned that the 2 core formation cultivators of Jiang clan were seriously injured by Qinshi when they fled. Later on, that nascent soul cultivator from Zixia sect, who was also Jiang clan's backer, made a mistake in his cultivation and died. Because of that, Yunwu sect and Jindao school broke away from Zixia sect's control and Jiang clan declined from then on. After she formed her gold core, she met Wang Qianyi and Xinbing on Demonic Mountain and learned that Yunwu sect and Jindao school joined hands and regained their sect. Although she didn't ask about Jiang clan's situation, she knew Jiang clan wouldn't have a good ending. Even if the two core formation cultivators didn't die, they would be imprisoned, and they didn't have much lifespan left. If she hadn't been trapped in Yunzhong and returned to the Celestial Pole according to her original plan, it would have been the best time for her to take revenge. Her cultivation level would have improved greatly, and they might still be alive. Unfortunately, she stayed in Yunzhong for a long time. She estimated the lifespan of the two core formation cultivators from Jiang clan was almost up. Besides, she had formed her nascent soul when she came back from Yunzhong. The higher one stood, the farther one could see. If Mo Chenga's cultivation level was only in the core formation realm now, maybe she would return to Yunwu sect to seek justice for what she owed her and vent her anger. But now, as long as she wanted to, she could destroy the entire Yunwu sect with a wave of her hand. She no longer had any thoughts of revenge. Why would a person care about the ants under her feet? This was the path to immortality. Everything depended on strength. Those people were ants to her, but what about her? Was she also an ant to those deification cultivators? She had to keep walking on this path because no one wanted to be an ant in other people's eyes. Isn't it too rash to follow them into Fengsha City like this? Mo Chenga asked in a low voice under the moonlight. During the day, she made an agreement with Huazong that they would enter Fengsha City together tomorrow. However, Mo Chenga felt a bit uneasy. Although all the cultivation groups in the Celestial Pole merged into the Immortal Alliance, they didn't have any friendship with Huazong and Huazong. Fengsha City was one of the 3 most dangerous places in the far west. It wasn't good to have untrustworthy companions. Qin, she said, we happened to bump into them. We wanted to enter Sandstorm City, but we couldn't avoid them. Besides, I have a slight understanding of these 2 people. They aren't good at fighting. If we combine our strength, it won't be difficult to defeat them. In fact, he was confident that even if he were to face the combined forces of Huazong and Huazong, he would still be able to easily defeat them. Although there was only a small difference between a mid-nascent soul cultivator and an early nascent soul cultivator, generally speaking, the strength of a mid-nascent soul cultivator was comparable to that of several early nascent soul cultivators. In particular, he was good at fights of magical powers. Mo Chenga thought about it and felt what he said was reasonable, so she no longer said anything. Instead, she changed the topic and asked, how much do you know about Huaziki and Zhongxi? Qin, she said, Spirit Beast sect has a total of 3 nascent soul cultivators, and Huaziki is one of them. His cultivation level is mediocre, and his spells are also mediocre. However, the Spirit Beast sect was proficient in taming beasts. He had a few strange insects and beasts in his possession that were quite unique. As for fellow Taoist Zong, he's the Grand Supreme Elder of Longevity Sect. Longevity Sect is a medium-sized cultivation group and only has 1 nascent soul cultivator. This fellow Taoist Zong isn't famous and he's also a bit old, so he has no hope of advancing to the next realm. However, he's been in the nascent soul realm for a long time and has rich experience in fighting, so we can't underestimate him. Mo Chenga also understood that for experienced cultivators like him, even if their cultivation levels weren't high, their life-saving skills were first class. As for their character, Qin, she paused and shook his head. I'm not familiar with them, so it's hard to say. As an outstanding disciple of Xianqing school, Qin, she knew a lot about the big cultivation groups and high-level cultivators, but he couldn't say he was familiar with them. When he was building his foundation, he liked to run around and made a group of friends. However, his cultivation speed was too fast. Among his old friends, only Jing Xingji could keep up with his cultivation speed. All the other nascent soul cultivators from different cultivation groups could be considered his seniors. Mo Chenga's situation was the same. She was 180 years old when she formed her nascent soul, so she was only 189 years old now. She was the youngest nascent soul cultivator in the history of the Celestial Pole. If it weren't for the changes in the world, she would have caused a sensation when she returned to the Celestial Pole. In fact, Lord Taoist Jinyang had long told them that when the affairs of the Immortal Alliance were settled, he would hold a nascent soul ceremony for her. At that time, they would publicize it widely to gain some face for Xianqing school. 8 nascent soul Lord Taoists, including the youngest nascent soul cultivator, would make Xianqing school, the #1 cultivation group in the Celestial Pole, live up to its name. However, for Mo Chenga, this nascent soul ceremony was more troublesome. At that time, she would have to entertain other people, which gave her a headache. She shook her head to put this matter to the back of her mind and asked, "Then what should we do now?" She thought for a while, then said, "You go left and I go right. We'll meet here in 2 hours at most." "Okay." Chenga agreed. The two of them didn't say anything else and split up. They had to enter Fengsha City tomorrow, so tonight they came to explore the way. Clouds appeared under her feet and Chenga took a detour to the south. Fengsha City was just like its name. The wind howled and sand and stones piled up. From the outside, the towering city walls and tall buildings were all made of sand and stones, giving it a majestic and spectacular view. However, when she got closer, she found there were holes formed by wind erosion everywhere. Not even a blade of grass grew. It was extremely desolate. Chenga didn't go far before she frowned. When she came during the day, she and she used their divine senses to sweep Fengsha City. At that time they only felt that Fengsha City was very big. Even with their powerful divine senses, they still couldn't penetrate it. Now that she was on the periphery of Fengsha City, she finally realized that this place was strange. The reason why their divine senses couldn't penetrate wasn't because Fengsha City was too big, but because the sand buildings and mounds inside interfered with divine senses. Upon realizing this, Chenga changed her direction and flew upward. She didn't stop until she was in midair. Looking down from above, under the moonlight, Fengsha City was full of shadows and strange buildings. Coupled with the sometimes sharp and sometimes muffled sound of the wind, it looked even more terrifying. It was as if there were really ghosts hiding inside, just like the underworld. Chenga shook her sleeves. The 8 trigrams of Tai Chi flew out and hovered in midair, emitting a hazy white light. The surrounding atmosphere immediately stabilized. She closed her eyes and spread out her divine sense. Sure enough, a moment later she opened her eyes with a slight frown on her face. As one of the 3 most dangerous places in the far west, Fengsha City was indeed different. At first glance, the sand buildings in Fengsha City seemed to have been abandoned for thousands of years. There were only traces of erosion left by the wind and rain over the years. There was nothing related to cultivators. However, she found that there was something strange hidden inside. These sand buildings and mounds were scattered in Fengsha City in a messy but wonderful way. When one's divine sense penetrated into them, one would be unknowingly misled. This kind of misdirection didn't have spiritual aura, so even nascent soul cultivators would fall for it. "This is really wonderful," Chenga muttered to herself while looking at the quiet Fengsha City under the moonlight. This was obviously a kind of formation, but it was very different from the formations in the cultivation world. All the formations in the cultivation world were related to spiritual aura. Therefore, once spiritual aura was exhausted, many formations and restrictions would lose their effectiveness. However, this Fengsha City didn't have any spiritual aura at all. Just by relying on sand buildings and mounds of different sizes, it could interfere with cultivators' divine senses. This was absolutely unheard of and unprecedented. Before this, she only heard that the formations in the secular world were arranged according to their positions, but those kinds of formations were ineffective against cultivators. Formations like the one before her that didn't need spiritual aura to affect cultivators were too heaven-defying. In the end, Chenga cast her gaze towards the depths of Fengsha City. Since her divine sense couldn't penetrate deeper, should she go inside and explore? After thinking for a while, she gave up on this idea. The formations in Fengsha City were too strange. There might be something beyond her understanding. In any case, she would go inside tomorrow, so it wasn't worth the risk. She put away the Tai Chi 8 trigrams and was about to land on the ground to meet up with Qin Shi. However, all of a sudden, her hair stood on end. She used Thundering Flash and her figure flashed several dozen feet away. Soon after, Chenga waved her sleeve. With a flash of lightning, a mass of golden lightning suddenly rushed forward. Boom! With an explosion, a dazzling golden light flashed in the place where she was standing. What collided with the golden lightning bolt was a mass of black fog that looked like an ink dot. Ah! A slight cry of pain came from the black fog. Chenga's gaze shifted and she stared coldly. Who's there? That mass of black fog swayed and stabilized in midair. Then, the black fog slowly grew bigger and finally dispersed, turning into a woman. This woman was in her 20s. Her appearance was delicate and beautiful, and she wore revealing clothes. She wore a tube top that only covered her chest, and a short skirt that only covered her thighs. Both the tube top and skirt were made of animal hide, revealing her snow-white waist and legs. She had a wild charm to her. At this moment, she moved her fingertips and a machete appeared in each of her hands. Then she put her hands together and the 2 machetes connected, turning them into strange weapons with blades at both ends. Holding the double-edged machetes, the woman glanced at Mo Chenga and suddenly smiled. "Are you a Dao cultivator?" Her pronunciation was clear, but her tone was a bit strange. She sounded neither like a Kunwu cultivator nor a Shirong cultivator. Mo Chenga frowned slightly and nodded slowly. "Yes, are you a devil cultivator?" Although this woman didn't seem to have any abnormalities, Mo Chenga still felt a hidden devil aura from her. Moreover, this woman's cultivation level wasn't weaker than hers. She was also in the early stage of the nascent soul realm. "Yes." The woman's eyes were full of curiosity. Seeing that Mo Chenga was holding the heaven and earth fan tightly with golden lightning circling around her body as if she was ready to attack at any time, she smiled and said, "You don't have to be so hostile, right? Although we're not on the same path, we don't have any grudges." Mo Chenga stared at her and said coldly, "You sneak attacked me just now, but now you say you don't have to be hostile? I just think it's interesting." The woman raised her hands and the two blades of the machetes in her hands spun. Under the moonlight, the cold light reflected on her face, making it bright and dark. She said, "This is the first time I've met a high-level Dao cultivator, and you're a woman. I heard from others that high-level female cultivators are rare among Dao cultivators. Even if there are, they're usually relatively weak, so I couldn't help but test you." Mo Chenga stared at her for a long time. Seeing that she still had a smile on her face, she softened her tone. "Really? What about now? You're very powerful," she said. Her expression was pure, which was incompatible with her coquettish charm. "It turns out there's also such a powerful female cultivator among Dao cultivators. I really admire you." "You're not weak either," Mo Chenga said. "I still have an appointment with someone, so I'll take my leave now." She put away the golden lightning, then turned around, wanting to leave. In the next moment, a ray of light suddenly attacked her, bringing with it a piercingly cold gale. The golden lightning rumbled. Mo Chenga appeared behind the female devil cultivator and said unhurriedly, "Your Excellency, do you only know how to sneak attack?" Chapter 537. Hearing Mo Chenga's voice, the female devil cultivator was shocked. She was about to retreat, but she found that the double-edged scimitar she hadn't had time to withdraw was sinking. The lightning on the blade intertwined as if it was stuck and couldn't be withdrawn. She stared at Mo Chenga in horror. "You, aren't you just a Dao cultivator in the early stage of the nascent soul realm?" She couldn't be blamed for being so surprised. The cultivation path of devil cultivators was based on safety. They were greedy for strength, so devil cultivators were usually stronger than Dao cultivators. If she didn't lie before, this was the first time she met a high-level Dao cultivator. It was no wonder she underestimated Mo Chenga's strength. Mo Chenga stared at her coldly. "In your eyes, Dao cultivators are at the mercy of others?" Right after she finished speaking, the lightning on the double-edged scimitar crackled and attacked the divine sense on the scimitar. The female devil cultivator turned pale with fright. She made a seal with her hands, condensed devil aura, and tried to withdraw the scimitar. This double-edged scimitar was her natal magic weapon, which contained the devil aura essence she refined for hundreds of years. If it was destroyed, her strength would be greatly reduced. Unexpectedly, Mo Chenga didn't intend to compete with her. Instead, she waved the heaven and earth fan and withdrew the golden lightning on the scimitar. When the female devil cultivator reacted, Mo Chenga had turned into a flight light and disappeared into the sky. The female devil cultivator withdrew the scimitar and stared blankly at the place where Mo Chenga disappeared. "What are you doing?" A deep male voice rang out. A cloud of dark blue smoke gathered in front of her and turned into a tall man with pale blue skin. This man was definitely not a normal human. There was a protrusion on his forehead that looked like a beast's horn, and his hands hidden under his sleeves shone with silver light. The color of his hair and eyes was the same as his skin color, a kind of azure blue that was close to black. This made his cold face look exceptionally handsome. This man was obviously in the early stage of the nascent soul realm, but the female devil cultivator hurriedly bowed to him. "Young master." The man just stared at her coldly and didn't speak for a long time. The female devil cultivator's expression gradually became nervous. In the end, she couldn't help but say, "Young master, a Dao cultivator appeared here. I wanted to kill him first, but I didn't expect you to underestimate his strength." The man glanced at her. He did not deliberately display his might, but every word that came out of his mouth was like a solid block of ice, hard and cold. The female demonic cultivator lowered her head and said in a terrified tone, "I was wrong. Please punish me, young master." The man glanced at her coldly. "I'm not your master. Why do you have to do this?" Hearing this, the female demonic cultivator slowly put away the fear on her face and fell silent. As a nascent soul cultivator, she definitely wasn't willing to refer to herself as a servant to a cultivator of the same level. However, she also knew that although the man in front of her was a cultivator of the same level as her, he had enough methods to make her wish for death. "Tell me what happened." The female demonic cultivator raised her head and reported, "I was just about to go in and take a look, but I found a Tao cultivator here and it was a nascent soul cultivator, so I decided to deal with it." "So you're saying that you don't know this person's background?" "There wasn't much time, so I didn't pursue this matter." The female devil cultivator hesitated for a moment, then said, "However, from the clothes on this female cultivator, she should be a disciple of a large sect. A nascent soul cultivator most likely belongs to a sect." The man's blue eyes stared at the place where Mo Chenga disappeared. "Since she could easily escape from your hands, this person can't be underestimated. Young master, celestial pole cultivators rarely set foot in this westernmost area, let alone nascent soul cultivators." At this critical moment, a nascent soul cultivator suddenly appeared here. "Should we investigate? Didn't you say we didn't have much time?" The man stared at her coldly. "Don't cause trouble. We'll act according to plan." Upon hearing this, the female devil cultivator bit her lip and finally bowed her head. "Yes." Mo Chenga rushed all the way back to the small town near Sandstorm City. Suddenly, she felt a powerful divine sense attacking her. She held the heaven and earth fan tightly and was on guard. The person rushed directly towards her. In the next moment, she felt a familiar breath and finally relaxed. "Senior Marshal Brother?" Seeing it was Mo Chenga, she heaved a sigh of relief. "I'm fine." "What did he mean?" Mo Chenga asked. "Senior Marshal Brother, what happened to you?" She said, "Did you see a nascent soul devil cultivator? I met him but he ran away. His divine power was strange and I was worried he would run into you." Mo Chenga hesitated for a moment. "I did run into a nascent soul devil cultivator, but her strength was average. I forced her to retreat after a sneak attack." She was stunned. "Average strength? Did we run into different people?" Then he asked, "What did the devil cultivator you ran into look like?" "It was a woman in the early stage of the nascent soul realm." "A woman?" She was surprised. "I ran into a male cultivator in the early stage of the nascent soul realm. He had a strange appearance and blue skin." "So, two devil cultivators appeared at the same time?" The two of them looked at each other. They both felt this matter wasn't simple. Huazong and Mo Chenga were here for the secret storehouse that might exist in Sandstorm City, but what about these two devil cultivators? Was there some secret in Sandstorm City they didn't know? The two of them thought about it. After a while, Mo Chenga said, "Aside from Sandstorm City, I can't think of any other reason why they came." She nodded slowly. "The far west is desolate. There's nothing worth a nascent soul cultivator's attention within a radius of several hundred miles. These two people must have come for Sandstorm City. If that's the case, wouldn't they have a conflict with us?" The celestial pole wasn't like Yunzhong. Righteous and devil cultivators once fought each other. Until now, the devil path had been refused entry to Kunwo from the north of Demonic Mountain. Devil path cultivators had a deep-rooted hatred for righteous path cultivators, especially Tao cultivators. She said, "We have to enter Sandstorm City. Let's talk about it when we run into them." Right after he said that, they suddenly felt two auras. The two of them turned around. It was Huazong and Mo Chenga. "Fellow Taoists." Huaziki saluted them with a solemn expression. "Have you sensed the presence of other cultivators?" Mo Chenga was surprised. The female devil cultivator who sneak attacked her wasn't very strong, but her breath-concealing technique was extraordinary. If she hadn't practiced the soul-refining art successfully, her sneak attack might have really succeeded. The one she encountered could easily escape from him, so her escaping technique was obviously extraordinary. Huaziki and Zhongxi's cultivation levels weren't outstanding, and their strength wasn't top-notch either, but they could actually sense their presence? "To tell you the truth," she said, "we encountered two devil cultivators just now." "Devil cultivators?" Huaziki was very surprised. How could there be devil cultivators in the far west? "Are you sure they're devil cultivators and not Kunwu cultivators who practice devil path cultivation techniques?" Huaziki asked this because there were many cultivators in Kunwu who practiced devil path cultivation techniques. They weren't real devil cultivators. They just coveted the special effects of certain devil path cultivation techniques. Among them, the most famous one was the head Grand Supreme Elder of Tiandao sect, Lu Dingyuan. Qin Shi said, "There are only so many nascent soul cultivators in the celestial pole. I've never heard of these two people. In that case, it's very likely that these two people are diabolism cultivators from the north of Demonic Mountain." Huaziki frowned. Now that the Immortal Alliance was hostile to the diabolism, was there something strange about two diabolism cultivators coming here? Mo Chenga asked. "Fellow Taoists, since you sensed the presence of other cultivators, couldn't you sense they were devil cultivators?" Huaziki smiled shyly and said, "To be honest, the presence of other cultivators here wasn't sensed by fellow Taoist Zong or me. It was my spiritual beast." As he spoke, he lightly patted the spiritual beast bag on his waist. A palm-sized butterfly flew out and landed on his shoulder. Huaziki said, "Although this spirit-seeking butterfly is a 7th-rank spiritual beast, it has almost no fighting power. It's only very sensitive to spiritual aura. It can sense even the slightest spiritual aura fluctuation." "I see." If they hadn't run into each other, she and Qin Shi wouldn't have found any traces of those two devil cultivators, but this spirit-seeking butterfly sensed them. Sure enough, the spiritual beasts of Spiritual Beast sect were extraordinary. If they were used properly, their strength would be greatly improved. "Fellow Taoists, what's going on with you running into devil cultivators? Do you know their origins and why they came here?" Huaziki was a bit nervous. Among nascent soul cultivators, his and Zong Si's strength was only average. They originally thought this errand wouldn't be dangerous and would be a good opportunity for them. Unexpectedly, after coming to Fengsha City, not only did they run into Qin Shi and Zong Si, but they also found traces of devil cultivators. If there was another conflict, it would be good enough if he and Zong Si could escape unscathed. Qin Shi shook his head. "Just now we ran into two devil cultivators, one male and one female. Both of them were in the early stage of the nascent soul realm. The male cultivator had a strange appearance, mysterious divine powers and extraordinary strength. The female cultivator didn't seem to have anything special about her for now. As for what they came here for, we don't know. With fellow Taoist Shoujing skills, it should be easy for you to deal with them, right?" Huaziki asked with a hopeful expression. Although Qin Shoujing was a junior, his cultivation level and divine powers were much higher than the two of them. It was said that his fire divine powers were superb, and his methods were far superior to cultivators in the same realm. With his cultivation level in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm, it shouldn't be difficult for him to deal with two devil cultivators in the early stage of the nascent soul realm, right? Qin Shi paused for a moment before answering. "That male cultivator's escaping technique is strange. It won't be easy to kill him, but it shouldn't be a problem for me to protect myself." Upon hearing this, Huaziki relaxed and said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Shoujing, you're too modest. I heard you could escape from Master Song Feng when you were in the core formation realm. Presumably, with your current divine powers, two early-stage cultivators shouldn't be a problem for you. Master Song Feng was powerful, cruel and bloodthirsty. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was the #1 bully in the celestial pole. People in Kunwu were afraid of him when they heard that Qin Shi once escaped from his pursuit. This news became more and more outrageous, especially after Qin Shi advanced to the nascent soul realm. In order to set off his genius, the news became more and more exaggerated. In fact, Qin Shi was able to escape from Master Song Feng's pursuit because Lord Taoist Jinyang and Lord Taoist Jinghe came to his rescue in time. With their protection, Master Song Feng could only retreat. Otherwise, even 10 Qin Shi wouldn't be enough to kill him. Qin Shi said, "Fellow Taoist Hua, you think too highly of me. I was just lucky." He didn't explain too much. In the cultivation world, modesty wasn't a virtue. Huaziki asked, "Where are they now? Did you guys fight?" "We just met face to face, then they ran away," Qin Shi said. "We don't know where they went after that." "Oh." Huaziki and Zong Si looked at each other then asked. Two devil cultivators suddenly appeared. "What do you think?" Qin Shi smiled and said, "My wife and I came here on Master's order to look for someone. If it's unrelated, it's fine. If there's any conflict, it won't be too late to take action." Upon hearing what Qin Shi said, Huaziki nodded in agreement. What fellow Taoist Shoujing said makes sense. Tomorrow we'll go to Fengsha City as planned. Qin Shi smiled. "All right, see you tomorrow." Chapter 538. In the morning the desert was extremely cold. The sun that had just risen from the horizon didn't add any warmth to the air. In the cold wind, Mo Chinga's group of 4 stood above Sandstorm City and looked down. "Fellow Taoist Hua, are we going in now?" Jingxi asked. Huaziki and the others arrived earlier than them, so they knew more than them. Huaziki said, "Let's wait for a while." Then he untied the spiritual beast bag on his waist and released a 5th-rank spiritual monkey. The monkey's fur was shiny, its eyes were red, and its wild nature was hard to tame. As soon as it came out of the bag, it bared its teeth at Mo Chinga, who was closest to it. "This red-eyed monkey is very clever and suitable for exploring the way." Huaziki patted the monkey's head and shouted, "Go!" Under the beast-taming art of Spirit Beast Sect, the monkey immediately became docile and obedient. It jumped down from the sky and hopped away, disappearing among the sand buildings and mounds. Mo Chinga couldn't help but glance at the row of spiritual beast bags hanging on Huaziki's waist. With the help of spiritual beasts, a cultivator's strength would be greatly improved. Unfortunately, although spiritual beasts weren't difficult to catch, it wasn't easy to recognize a master. Before hatching, spiritual beasts could recognize a master by blood, but after hatching they could only establish a subordinate contract. Compared to a spiritual beast contract that recognized a master, a subordinate contract required one's divine sense to be much stronger than that of the spiritual beast. Because of that, even though Kunwu was close to the demonic beast forest, there weren't many cultivators who owned spiritual beasts. Even if they did, their cultivation level was one realm lower than theirs. However, the cultivators of Spirit Beast Sect were an exception. Every cultivator of Spirit Beast Sect had a spiritual beast that they had established a blood contract with. The so-called blood contract was much more complicated than simply recognizing a master by blood. It was similar to a natal magic weapon. The natal magic weapon contained the cultivator's blood essence, so the injury of the magic weapon was the injury of the master. The same was true for a blood contract. The spiritual beast and its master depended on each other for survival. After establishing a blood contract, the spiritual beast's strength would be greatly improved. It could also communicate with its master and could use secret techniques to cultivate together. Therefore, the natal spiritual beasts of Spirit Beast Sect cultivators were in the same realm as themselves. Huaziki was a nascent soul cultivator, so his natal spiritual beast should be in the 8th rank. Aside from Yun Zhongyuan and Old Donkey Ma, Mo Chinga hadn't seen any 8th rank spiritual beasts, so she didn't know whether they were more powerful than demonic beasts. Seeing that his spirit-seeking butterfly and scarlet-eyed monkey were both very amazing, it was likely that his natal spirit beasts wouldn't be weak either. Speaking of which, the Spirit Beast Sect's most famous spirit beast was the sect's founder's mount, the Qilin. However, many people believed that the so-called Qilin was a spiritual beast that possessed the blood of the Qilin. One should know that the Qilin was one of the 5 ancient spirits that had disappeared from the world a long time ago. Even if it still existed, it was not something that could be tamed by the cultivators of today. When she thought of Qilin, she couldn't help but think of the 5 spirits sacrificial temple. She had already seen the Azure Dragon and the Vermilion Bird sacrificial temples and knew that the Black Tortoise sacrificial temple was located in Yunzhong, but she didn't know where the White Tiger and Qilin sacrificial temples were. Since the Azure Dragon, the Vermilion Bird, and the Black Tortoise existed, White Tiger and Qilin should also exist, right? After a while, the red-eyed monkey still did not turn around. Qin, she asked, "Fellow Taoist Hua, why hasn't your spiritual beast returned yet?" When Huaziki heard this, he made a hand seal, but his face darkened and he didn't move for a long time. Seeing that his expression was strange, Qin, she asked, "What's wrong? Did something happen to it?" Huaziki said with a heavy tone, "The red-eyed monkey's life isn't in danger, but I don't know why it hasn't come back. Moreover, the connection between us has become very weak." At this point, Huaziki frowned deeply. In terms of divine power, Spirit Beast Sect's cultivators couldn't be considered outstanding in Kunwu. The reason why it was ranked among the 7 great cultivation groups was because its beast-taming ability was outstanding. With the help of spiritual beasts, its cultivators were usually slightly stronger than ordinary cultivators. It could be said that Spirit Beast Sect's beast-taming technique was the foundation of its foothold. But now, as soon as the red-eyed monkey entered Sandstorm City, his beast-taming technique failed. If that was the case, wouldn't his strength be greatly reduced after entering Sandstorm City? Brother Hua, Zhongxi, who rarely spoke, suddenly spoke. He looked at Sandstorm City under his feet and said, "This Sandstorm City is actually a great formation." Mo Chinga's eyes brightened. This Zhongxi's attainments and formations weren't low to be able to see that there was a formation in Sandstorm City. Oh? What did Brother Zhongxi? Huaziki hurriedly asked. Zhongxi said, on the surface, Sandstorm City doesn't seem to have anything to do with cultivators, but the disorderly placement of the sand piles actually has a pattern. I just did some calculations and it coincides with the Chiman divination art. Huaziki was surprised. Was this Sandstorm City left behind by ancient seniors? It's hard to say. Zhongxi frowned slightly. Although these sand piles are in line with the Tao of formations, they're very complicated. I can only understand 30 to 40% of them. Moreover, logically speaking, formations lose their effectiveness without spiritual aura, but this great formation is different. There's clearly no spiritual aura inside Sandstorm City, but it's still effective. Is that so? Huaziki was shocked. He was a nascent soul cultivator. Although he didn't know much about formations, he had some general knowledge. He had never heard of a formation still being effective without spiritual aura in the cultivation world. After thinking for a while, he became excited. In that case, this Sandstorm City must be a relic left behind by a powerful ancient figure. He was right. A formation that was set up with great power just based on the location of the formation, and even a fifth-rank spirit beast got lost in it. This was definitely not something a mortal could do, not even the cultivators of today, unless it was left behind by an ancient or immemorial age cultivator. However, Zhongxi said, Brother Hua, don't be too happy. We thought this task would be easy because there aren't any spirit veins in the westernmost area. Even if there are relics, there won't be powerful restrictions. But now it seems that we can't even find the entrance. Hearing this, Huaziki also calmed down. You're right. A spirit beast like the red-eyed monkey is suitable to explore the way because it can see through ordinary illusions. But even it got lost in Sandstorm City, so the formation inside is not trivial. Don't worry too much, Zhongxi said again. At least, we can be sure that this great formation is not a killing formation. Without spiritual aura, spells naturally couldn't be used. Therefore, this great formation that was set up with the help of strange techniques was definitely not a killing formation. Fellow Taoists, Mo Chenga suddenly said, without spiritual aura, although we can't set up a killing formation, we have to be on guard against the traps inside. Traps? Huaziki was stunned. The art of mechanisms had been lost for a long time. Even nascent soul cultivators only knew of its name. Yes. Mo Chenga took out a compass and observed the 5 elements while saying, in the Middle Ages the art of mechanisms was not lost yet. If Sandstorm City is really a relic left behind by an ancient figure, there might be mechanisms here. Upon seeing her taking out the compass, Zhongxi's eyes brightened. Fellow Taoist Qingwei seems to know a lot about the art of mechanisms. Mo Chenga smiled and said, I know a little about formations, so I also know a little about the related art of mechanisms. Really? Fellow Taoist Qingwei is also a formation master? I only know a little, Mo Chenga said modestly. She then asked, Fellow Taoist Zong, are you proficient in formations? I wouldn't dare. I only know a little. Knowing that Mo Chenga knew about formations, Zhongxi became friendly. Looking at the compass in Mo Chenga's hand, he said, the yin and yang and the 5 elements here are very stable. It doesn't look like a bewildering formation or an illusory formation. Both bewildering formations and illusory formations used yin and yang and the 5 elements to create an illusion, so yin and yang intertwined and the 5 elements were in disorder. Mo Chenga looked down at the compass. Sure enough, it was very stable after she injected spiritual aura and didn't change at all. She frowned slightly. This great formation is far beyond the level of today's formations. Yes. Zhongxi sighed. Since there's no spiritual aura and yin and yang and the 5 elements are stable, who would know there's a formation here? With my level of formations, I can only see that it's in harmony with the divination arts, but I can't tell what kind of formation this is. I wonder if fellow Taoist Qingwei can see anything? Mo Chenga shook her head. Me neither. In fact, she knew a little more than Zhongxi and could understand about 50 to 60% of it, but that was all. As for what kind of formation this was and what it was, she had no idea. The 4 of them were silent. After a while, Qinshi asked, Fellow Taoists, you came here first. Didn't you explore the way? Huaziki was a bit embarrassed. Fellow Taoist Zong and I went to other places before. When we arrived in Sandstorm City, we were busy recovering our spiritual aura, so we just summoned the spirit-seeking butterfly and explored this place. Such carelessness really didn't seem like the behavior of a nascent soul cultivator, but on second thought, it was also human nature. The westernmost area not only had harsh conditions, but it also didn't have any spirit veins, so it had always been far from cultivators' sight. Even though it was one of the 3 most dangerous places in the westernmost area, who would have thought Sandstorm City, a place without any spirit veins, would actually have such a powerful formation? Apart from that, Mo Tienga also heard the hidden message in Huaziki's words. He and Zhongxi were both nascent soul cultivators, but when they arrived in Sandstorm City, their spiritual aura actually wasn't enough. It seemed the place they went before must be a dangerous place. Moreover, the 2 of them must have encountered danger. Otherwise, they wouldn't have rushed to Sandstorm City without recovering their spiritual aura. Maybe it was in this dangerous place that they learned the secret storehouse was in Sandstorm City. With that thought in mind, Mo Tienga turned to look at Qin Shi. The 2 of them exchanged a tacit look. What about now? Qin Shi asked, fellow Taoists, are you going to enter the city like this? Huaziki hesitated for a moment but soon made up his mind. If you didn't encounter us, presumably fellow Taoist Shoujing would have also entered the city, right? So fellow Taoist Hua has decided to enter. Yes. Seeing that Zhongxi didn't object, Huaziki continued, since this great formation in Sandstorm City doesn't exist in the current cultivation world, there's a high chance there's a treasure inside. How can we let it go? Correct, Zhongxi said, we found this place with great difficulty, so we naturally can't give it up. Even if they didn't have the mission from the Immortal Alliance, they still had to enter and explore the great formation in Sandstorm City. What about fellow Taoist Shoujing and Qingwei? Qin Shi smiled and said, what fellow Taoist Hua said makes sense. My wife and I also think so. The 4 of them reached an agreement. After discussing for a while, they soon came up with an idea and landed somewhere in Sandstorm City. At that moment, a man and a woman appeared on the outskirts of Sandstorm City. Young master, they've already entered. The tall, blue-skinned man stared at the place where the 4 people disappeared. After a long time, he finally said, it's good to let them explore the way first. Chapter 539. Looking down from above, Sandstorm City was a bit big, but with the speed of nascent soul cultivators, even if they flew slowly, 1 hour was enough for them to circle around the city. However, they couldn't just fly in the sky if they wanted to find the hidden secrets of Sandstorm City. They had to come down and search slowly. Not only were there many sand buildings and mounds in Sandstorm City, but they also formed a formation. If they searched like this, it wouldn't be a matter of a few hours. The 4 of them entered the city. After walking for a while, Huaziki's red-eyed monkey still hadn't come back, and the 4 of them got lost. Now the 4 of them realized they still underestimated Sandstorm City. Such an exquisite formation that didn't need spiritual aura to trap 4 nascent soul cultivators was simply unheard of. After confirming this, the 4 of them discussed for a while and decided to draw a map of Sandstorm City first. For cultivators who could fly, drawing a map was also simple. They just needed to fly in the air and draw it. But after doing so, the 4 of them were shocked again. This great formation not only interfered with divine senses, but also affected their eyesight. They could see clearly, but when they tried to remember it, they couldn't remember what it looked like. Now the 4 of them realized Sandstorm City wasn't an ordinary distant past era relic. If this place was really a treasure trove of a great ancient sect, that sect must be very powerful. Hua and Zong were very excited to come to this conclusion. Their cultivation levels were very ordinary. It had been hundreds of years since they advanced to the nascent soul realm, but they hadn't been able to advance further. If they could find some treasures here, it would be a great fated chance for them. Mo Tienga and Qin Shi, on the other hand, were worried. After what happened in the Sea of Returning Ruins, they felt that distant past relics weren't something to be trifled with. Not to mention the danger in the Vermilion Bird Sacrificial Temple, the deification refined corpse they accidentally released would have killed them on the spot if they were 1 step slower. However, they also understood that opportunities and dangers coexisted. If they didn't dare to take risks, they would miss their fated chance. Besides, they were here to find Xiao Xilan's remains. As a nascent soul cultivator, the place where Xiao Xilan died must be a dangerous place, so they were mentally prepared. If we can't draw a map, what should we do? Huaziki asked after calming down from his excitement. Qin Shi pondered for a while and said, then we'll take our time. Fellow Taoists, are you in a hurry? Huaziki shook his head. When we handed in the task, we didn't specify a return date. However, Celestial Alliance is facing a huge battle and it isn't good for them to not return. Then does fellow Hua have any other methods? Huaziki and Zhong Si looked at each other and finally nodded. Then we'll do as fellow Taoist Shoujing says. Although the current situation was tense, to be frank, even if the Immortal Alliance collapsed as nascent soul cultivators, where couldn't they go? It was good that the Celestial Alliance was there and they had many low-grade cultivators to serve them. However, in front of a huge opportunity to advance, it was insignificant. After a short pause, Huaziki continued, "Fellow Taoists, this sandstorm city is so big that it would take too long to search step by step." Qin remained calm and asked, "Then what does fellow Taoist Hua think? In my opinion, why don't we split up and look for him? If we find him, we'll inform him." Qin glanced at Mo Tiange then nodded. "All right." Huaziki smiled. "Brother Zhong and I will go south and you two will go north. What do you think?" "No problem." The four of them exchanged sound-transmitting jade talismans and split up to search. When Huaziki and Zhong Si were far away, Mo Tiange asked, "Senior Marshal Brother, they did it on purpose, right?" Qin smiled. "Why do you think so?" Mo Tiange said, "They have the map of the storehouse in their hands and they might have found specific information about the treasures, but we don't have anything. Since there's no danger here, why would they drag us along?" Qin nodded. "What you said makes sense." Mo Tiange continued, "Besides, Senior Marshal Brother, you're in the middle stage, so it's not a problem for you to deal with a few early-stage cultivators. You're far stronger than them, so if you find the treasures, you should at least divide them equally, right? This might not be fair to them." "Right." Qin nodded again. He and Huaziki only knew each other, but they weren't friends. They had all the information about the storehouse, so how could he be willing to share the treasures with them? He pulled them along because they came at the right time, and he wasn't sure if there was any danger, so he might as well bring them along to increase their strength. If there was really no danger, he didn't need to inform them. If their strength exceeded theirs, it wouldn't be too late to ask for their help. Huaziki's plan was very good, and the two of them had nothing to be angry about. They came here for Xiao's Island's matter, so it was just a coincidence that they ran into them. "Then, Senior Marshal Brother, are you willing?" Once they realized there was no danger, they left us behind. Qin chuckled and looked at her. "You're the one who's not willing, right?" "Of course." Mo Tiange said without hesitation. "It's fine if they don't know. They pulled us into their group, but now they don't want us to get involved. How could they let us off so easily?" "Of course not." Qin smiled. "How could there be no danger here? When the time comes, they'll have to call us obediently. Right?" Mo Tiange also smiled. That Senior Xiao was a member of Xuanji School. She was proficient in formations, but she also died here, so this place is definitely not simple. So let them be. Qin's smile was a bit cold as he stared at the place where Huaziki and Zhong Tiange disappeared. When they hit a wall, they'll naturally inform us. Even if they don't have time to inform us, no matter how big this sandstorm city is, we'll be able to find the place of the accident as long as we spend some time. The so-called accident referred to the death of Huaziki and Zhong Tiange. It would have been fine if they hadn't told them before, but they wanted to pull them into their group. Now that they saw there was no danger here, they wanted to get rid of them, which was a bit unkind. That being the case, why should they worry about their lives? Let's go. Let's take advantage of this time to walk around and see what's going on in Sandstorm City. He believed that Mo Tiange's attainments and formations weren't inferior to Zhong Si's. She had learned a lot since she was a child. She also obtained Xuanji School of Formations, Mo Yaoqing's notes, and Fu Yaozi's guidance. When it came to formations, there weren't many people in the Celestial Pole who were better than her. Whether it was finding Xiao's Island's traces or cracking the secret storehouse, it would be much easier to figure out this great formation first. A few days passed quickly. Huaziki and Zhong Si stood under a mound, seemingly looking for something. Next to the mound was a sand pit. "Brother Zhong, are you sure this is the entrance to the storehouse?" Zhong Si held a sheepskin scroll in his hand and compared it with the map. "It should be." He pointed at the mounds around them. The sandstorm formation itself is a big formation, but the dozen or so mounds around it form a small formation. If the map we got is correct, the entrance to the storehouse is at the eye of this small formation, which is this spot. If Mo Tiange and Qin were here, they would find that the sheepskin scroll in Zhong Si's hand wasn't the map they took from the beast cultivators. Their previous guess was correct. Huaziki and Zhong Si did obtain accurate information about this storehouse from somewhere else, so they planned to fish for some benefits from it. But there doesn't seem to be anything unusual here. Huaziki frowned and looked at the sand pit in front of him. He only knew a little about formations. He couldn't see through the formation Zhongxi said was here, and he had no idea where the eye of the formation was. Zhongxi looked pensive and sighed. I can only be sure that the eye of the formation is here, and the entrance should also be here. But I can't see how to enter it for the time being. Then he turned to Huaziki. Brother Hua, this sandstorm city isn't big. If we delay any longer, Qin Shoujing and the others will come looking for us. What should we do? So, it'll take a long time to solve this formation. Huaziki understood the meaning behind his words. Zhongxi frowned deeply. I don't know whether we can solve it or not. Is that so? Huaziki thought for a moment and said, You said Mo Qingwei's attainments and formations are good. If we can't solve it, we can only call them over. If that's the case, won't we have to give up the leadership? Zhongxi was worried. Qin Shoujing is in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. I heard he's very powerful. The two of us together might not be his match. At that time, won't they get all the good things? What if they're cruel and merciless and kill us for the treasures? What should we do? There's nothing we can do, Huaziki said. I know a little about Qin Shoujing's character. It's said that he wholeheartedly seeks the great Tao and isn't a bloodthirsty person. He's completely different from Qin Jinghe. If not, I wouldn't have invited them to go with us. If it really comes to that, we can let them choose the treasures first. Who told us to be weaker? All right. Zhongxi shook his head, lowered his head, and continued to study the entrance. At that moment, Huaziki suddenly felt a chill on his back. Without thinking, he pulled the spiritual beast bag and a golden-winged rock flew out. Oh, umph. A cold snort responded to him. Then a mass of black fog appeared out of thin air. The black fog dispersed, and a man and a woman appeared in front of them. The tall, blue-skinned man stared coldly at the two of them and raised his right hand. This hand didn't look like a human's hand at all. It was silvery white and flashed a cold light. It was actually a fake hand made of metal. At this moment, a dead butterfly lay in the palm of this fake hand. Huaziki was furious. Just now, his spirit-seeking butterfly sensed spiritual aura fluctuations, then it lost track of them. It was actually killed by this man. He was a disciple of the spiritual beast sect, and his spiritual beasts were his companions. Seeing his spiritual beasts killed, he was instantly furious. A long black whip appeared in Huaziki's hand. The golden-winged rock let out a cry and stared fiercely at the two devil cultivators in front of it. Zhongxi also put away the sheepskin scroll. With a wave of her hand, 5 small flags with red, yellow, blue, green and gold colors appeared in front of her. Who are you? Huaziki asked angrily, Why did you kill my spiritual beasts? The man glanced at them and revealed a mocking smile in his eyes. He said, Hong Shao. The woman next to him answered, Yes, young master. Mo Chenga, who was calculating formations, suddenly raised her head and looked in a certain direction. Senior Marshal Brother. To the south of Fengsha City, spiritual aura surged and intertwined. It seemed something had happened. Chapter 540. Huaziki was delighted when he received this task. Now that the Immortal Alliance was at war with the demonic cultivators and the demonic cultivators, he would inevitably be involved if he stayed in Kunwu. There were only 3 nascent soul cultivators in the Spirit Beast sect, and he was the one with the lowest cultivation level. Now, not only could he legitimately leave Kunwu Mountain and stay away from danger, but he might also get a fated chance and advance in one fell swoop. Coincidentally, Zhongxi, who carried out this task with him, had known him for several years and had a good relationship with him. On the surface, he and Zhongxi didn't seem to have anything in common. One was a nascent soul ancestor of a large sect with tens of thousands of years of history, the other was an elder of a small sect who barely advanced to the nascent soul realm and struggled to maintain his orthodoxy. One was young and had a bright future while the other was about to die. But in fact, Huaziki felt that their situations weren't too different. He was more than 700 years old, which was half of the lifespan of a nascent soul cultivator, but he was still stuck in the early stage of the nascent soul realm. He couldn't even cultivate to the peak of the early stage, let alone advance. It wasn't easy for cultivators of the Spirit Beast sect to help their natal spiritual beasts advance. Many seniors with outstanding aptitude stopped at the early stage of the nascent soul realm. His aptitude was only above average, so his advancement to the nascent soul realm surprised many of his fellow disciples. His aptitude was ordinary, and his cultivation level was stagnant in the past 200 years. Although he was the respected Grand Elder of the Spirit Beast sect, in the eyes of the head ancestor, He was no different from the head of the sect who took care of chores. The only difference was that his cultivation level was higher and he was more presentable. If there were no accidents, he would be stuck in the early stage of the nascent soul realm until he died, just like most nascent soul cultivators. But how could he be willing to give up? As long as there was a chance, he wanted to advance to the middle stage of the nascent soul realm even at the risk of dying. Zhongxi, who only had 200 to 300 years of lifespan left, was the same as him or even more eager. Therefore, as soon as they accepted this task, they thought of the same thing. The secret storehouse of an ancient sect was a rare opportunity. In the past, they had to pay a great price to get such information, but now they got a clue for no reason. In the eyes of others, the map was too vague and it was difficult to find the place where the treasure was hidden. The westernmost area was desolate and didn't even have a spirit vein, so it wasn't a good task. But he and Zhongxi had other plans. The far west was vast. If they really couldn't find any conclusive clues, then the two of them would just take it as avoiding disaster and wouldn't suffer any losses. If they found something, then it would be a great opportunity for them. With this in mind, they came to the far west. Unexpectedly, this time the heavens really cared for them. Midway, they stopped at an oasis and accidentally found the place where the ancient cultivator had died. They found a complete map on the ancient cultivator's body. Comparing this map with the incomplete one in their hands, they found that the secret storehouse was in Sandstorm City. Before leaving, the two of them took away all the things in the temporary cave residence. They didn't expect that the ancient senior cultivator's spirit beast bag would preserve a strange insect that had survived until now. Hundreds of flying insects swarmed out and chased after the two of them. After fleeing to the vicinity of Sandstorm City, they finally got rid of the exotic insects. They just stopped at a small town nearby to recover their spiritual aura. When they were about to explore according to the map, they happened to run into Qin Shoujing and Mo Qingwei from Shenqing School. He was jealous of these two people. Or to be precise, there weren't many cultivators in the celestial pole who didn't envy them. Their cultivation path was so smooth that people couldn't help but envy them. They were young, but they already advanced to the nascent soul realm. Qin Shoujing in particular had double spiritual roots like him, but he actually succeeded in forming his nascent soul at the age of 200. Moreover, he also advanced to the middle stage of the nascent soul realm early. With a lifespan of 1,000 years left, he might have a chance to advance to the deification realm. If possible, he really didn't want to disclose this matter to them. However, when he remembered that Lord Daoist Shenyin from Shenqing School was one of the people who took the map from the beast cultivator, he and Huazong finally decided to pull them into their group. On the other hand, Qin Shoujing's divine power was outstanding. If he joined them, they would have a higher chance of success. After entering Sandstorm City, they found that the great formation inside was only difficult to crack but didn't have any real danger, so they immediately suggested splitting up. If they could deal with it, they didn't need to share the treasure with these two people. If it was beyond their ability, it wouldn't be too late to send them a message. Even if they were discovered midway, they could use the excuse that they just found the entrance. However, he never expected that just as he and Zhongxi were about to break the formation, the devil cultivator that Qin Shoujing and the others found would actually appear. That blue-skinned male cultivator seemed to look down on them and only ordered his maid to attack. Huaziki was furious, not only because this person killed his spiritual beast, the spirit-seeking butterfly, but also because they looked down on him. The golden-winged great rock let out a cry. That female devil cultivator named Hong Xiao snorted contemptuously. The strange windmill-like weapon in her hand spun and pounced on the golden-winged great rock. Huaziki sneered and lashed out with the whip in his hand. The whip kept lengthening and coiling towards Hong Xiao. Hong Xiao didn't even look at it. Her figure changed hundreds of times and she passed through the whip. The double-edged dagger in her hand ruthlessly stabbed at the golden-winged great rock. The golden-winged great rock opened its mouth and a bolt of lightning struck at Hong Xiao. Lightning spells were the most powerful among all spells, especially since this golden-winged great rock was already in the 8th rank. Unable to dodge, Hong Xiao held the double-edged dagger in the middle and pulled it back into 2 daggers. Then she crossed her hands and the crossed daggers easily blocked the lightning. Huaziki's expression darkened. He originally thought that since he and Zhongxi were both in the early stage of the nascent soul realm and these two devil cultivators were also in the early stage, they might not necessarily be weaker than them. It wasn't until now that he realized he underestimated devil cultivators. There were almost no real devil cultivators in Kunwu. Even that abnormal Master Song Feng wasn't a simple devil cultivator. For tens of thousands of years, devil cultivators had been refused entry to the north of Demonic Mountain, which made them all underestimate their strength. In fact, in terms of one-on-one combat, devil cultivators were stronger than them. It was just that there weren't many devil cultivators, so they were always suppressed. Brother Zong. Waziki was about to call Zong Si to help, but when he looked around he found that Zong Si was fighting with the devil aura around him. The 5 elements flags and the devil aura were entangled, and Zong Si couldn't break free. As for the male devil cultivator, he was still standing on the side, coldly watching him fight with Hong Xiao. Waziki's heart sank. Only now did he understand what Qin Shoujing meant by his mysterious divine ability. This male cultivator seemed to be only in the early stage, but his strength was far above his and Zong Si's. He couldn't help but regret. Why did he want to take the treasure for himself and send Qin Shoujing and Mo Qingwei away? If the 4 of them joined forces, they could definitely defeat these 2 people. But it was too late to regret. He could only hope that Qin Shoujing and Mo Qingwei could detect the spiritual aura fluctuation and arrive in time. Just as he was thinking about this, he suddenly felt pain in his chest and his spiritual breath became chaotic. His natal spiritual beast, the golden-winged great roc, was stabbed by Hong Xiao. The golden-winged great roc rolled down from the sky after its wing was stabbed by a dagger. It managed to stabilize itself and cried at Huaziki. An 8th-rank spiritual beast already had spiritual intelligence. The golden-winged great roc was asking him for help. Seeing that his spiritual beast was injured and couldn't resist, Huaziki lashed out with his whip towards Hong Xiao. Under his interference, Hong Xiao had no choice but to retreat. At this moment, the male cultivator who had been standing in the air all along suddenly looked towards the north. We can't delay any longer. With that said, the silver fake hand suddenly expanded and reached towards Zong Si. Ah! Hearing the scream, Huaziki turned his head and his expression changed dramatically. That male cultivator's fake hand crushed Zong Si's head just like that. Even his nascent soul couldn't escape. Fear welled up in his heart. Without much time to think, he teleported to the golden-winged great roc's side and put it into the spiritual beast bag. Then he turned into a ray of light and fled into the distance. Want to escape? The male cultivator snorted coldly. A giant hand suddenly appeared in the air and ruthlessly squeezed towards Huaziki. Ah! This time it was Huaziki who screamed. His body was squeezed into a pile of flesh. Even his nascent soul, which had just escaped, couldn't escape in time and was squeezed into a mist of blood. The mist of blood dispersed. The male cultivator wiped the blood on the fake hand he took back. Young master. The maid Hong Xiao picked up the 2 people's things and offered the sheepskin scroll. The male cultivator took the sheepskin scroll and said, "Let's go." Not long after they left, 2 rays of light appeared in the sky and quickly landed. Seeing the ground full of flesh and blood and Zong Si's headless corpse, Qin Shi frowned. We're late. Sensing the spiritual aura fluctuation, the 2 of them immediately rushed over. However, Fengsha City wasn't big, but it wasn't small either. Even if the 2 of them flew at their fastest speed, it still took them less than an hour to reach the spiritual aura fluctuation. Huaziki and Zong Si were already dead. Looking at the pieces of flesh scattered on the ground, Mo Chenga endured her disgust and said, "These 2 people are really ruthless." She'd seen many corpses, but she'd never seen such a disgusting one. The people she was joking with a few days ago turned into a pile of flesh just like that. Qin Shi glanced around, bent down, and picked up a palm-sized piece of metal from the sand. He weighed it and said, "This is black gold." Black gold? Mo Chenga was surprised. Black gold was a precious material for refining tools, especially suitable for forging swords. It was relatively common in ancient times, but it was rare nowadays. For sword cultivators, 1 or 2 pieces were hard to find. They once saw it in a secret place in ruins of NC, where cultivators from ancient sects used it to make mechanisms. How could he just pick up such a precious thing so casually? It seems to belong to those 2, Qin Shi said. This piece of black gold was shiny and didn't look like it was left behind from ancient times. Mo Chenga took the piece of black gold from his hand and looked at it carefully. She said, "This piece of black gold is cut very neatly and has almost no impurities. It doesn't seem to be a simple material. And if it's a material, it might be something from ancient cultivators." Qin Shi suddenly noticed that Mo Chenga's expression became very strange, so he asked, "What's wrong?" Mo Chenga gave him the piece of black gold. "Touch it." As soon as Qin Shi touched it, he discovered that there were very fine engravings on the surface of the black gold piece. The 2 of them looked at each other. Emo Chenga took out an ink box from her Chenkuan bag, dipped the piece of black gold in ink, and pressed it on the back of her hand. She took the piece of black gold away. The lines on the back of her hand were messy, forming a messy pattern. When the two of them saw this pattern, they looked up at each other and blurted out, "A map." You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.